It is Professor Weed Wednesdays, and hi everybody, welcome back to Cannabis Chat for a Wednesday. It is Professor Weed Wednesdays, and sure enough, we've got another educator, entrepreneur, waiting to be interviewed by us. His name is Ulysses Youngblood. Ulysses, thank you so much for joining us here on Cannabis Chat on Wednesday. Hi everybody, welcome back to Cannabis Chat for a Wednesday. It is Professor Weed Wednesdays, and sure enough, we've got another educator, entrepreneur, waiting to be interviewed by us. His name is Ulysses Youngblood. Ulysses, thank you so much for joining us here on Cannabis Chat on Wednesday.
Jimmy, so happy to be here with you guys, and I appreciate you extending the invite to be here.
So you work at Clark University as an adjunct professor, correct?
I do, absolutely. I teach an entrepreneurship class, actually two entrepreneurship class under the School of Management, and then I also teach a few cannabis courses that's under the Masters of Public Administration, which is a graduate level course.
There you go. Do you want to give us a few names of those courses that you are an instructor of?
Yeah. So the first one is Art of the Pitch, and that is more or less a sales class. And then I just wrapped up another course, which is called, what's the other course? Creating a Movement, which is more of a marketing class. And then in the springtime, I'll be teaching a capital raising finance class. And then I developed this summer and for this semester a social equity class in cannabis. I also taught a regulatory framework class in cannabis. So the cannabis classes are graduate level, like I said, under the Masters of Public Administrations here at Clark. So it's cool to be in two different schools, you know, policy and business, but I'm definitely a business guy through and through.
I want to ask how challenging it was for you to pitch those courses. And of course, they know that you're involved with the cannabis world. So how challenging was that?
It wasn't challenging at all, to be honest with you. I would say for the entrepreneurship. In fact, let me back it up. So I got involved with Clark through cannabis. I got asked, once we got our host agreement here in the city of Worcester, there's a really good guy, his name's Jacob Sanders, who was a graduate student here at Clark, as well as working in the city of Worcester under the city manager's office. So once we had signed a host agreement with the city, he was like, hey, it'd be great for you to be interviewed for this class that I'm developing. And that class he was developing was for the master's, the certificate program that Clark has. So they already had, you know what I mean, like a program for cannabis. Mm-hmm. And then once I realized that there was a need for him to interview me, I saw that there was a need for entrepreneurship classes in terms of adjunct professors as well. So yeah, Clark was very open to cannabis because they had a program going on before I got involved.
And you mentioned you're part of the social equity applicant pool, the economic empowerment pool in the state of Massachusetts. And you did kind of hint that you actually have one of those valuable delivery licenses. Is that accurate?
So we have a certificate at this point. Okay. We have a certificate, and yes, but we will be licensed with it. There's absolutely no question.
And as we both know, the exact regulations and rules are still being ironed out by the Cannabis Control Commission, some influential others in this process, let's just say. Where do you stand on what you would like to see as far as the abilities to have a viable a viable business with that delivery license?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, it is a little bit different because we do have a manufacturer's license, provisional license. We do have a retail license, and we're in the middle of doing a build out right now as we speak, 5 miles down the road from Clark University here. So I will be open and say that we're in the middle. I know some of those guys that are special interests in saying, hey, we don't want all this power for delivery. But then I know businesses that are social equity, economic empowerment, and this is their way in, right? Mm-hmm. Is to get a delivery license. So my gut tells me that the barrier should be lowered, no question about it, right? So that means being able to buy wholesale. I would love to see some packaging components thrown in there. But we know that on the other end of it, we have some groups that want to basically peel those ideas back. So,
or at least adapt them. Do you find that you're running up against a brick wall at this point, or do you think there's some movement here?
So me personally, man, I run through big walls. But like I said, it's for us, it's different, man, because I trust me, I do know some big money guys here in Worcester, and they're like, we don't want this, right? Because it's gonna cut into our profits for retail. But then me, I'm like, yes, I'm building out a retailer, but I'm an EE. We're gonna have a delivery license. So, you know, put it this way: Major Bloom, me and Lori's business is positioned to outlast any decision. And I mean, it's just honestly just the fate, a lot of faith, and you know, the fate that just way things rolled out this way that we're positioned to outlast it.
Well, as you know, I've met Lori Lucien, your partner there,
Absolutely.
and I've always enjoyed her passion for this industry and the movement and all this. And I think it's great that you're already established in Worcester. There are quite a few other brick and mortar dispensaries, adult use dispensaries, or wait, as you like to call them, establishments. Is that
No, no,
right?
we are the establishment because it's not just retail,
Gotcha. And,
right? So
right.
our house is the establishment,
I get you. I understand that. And in that establishment, will
right?
you be showcasing some of your clothing line?
That's a great question. So there's room for it. I think that there's room for it, especially some of the partners that we work with. And I'm just a kid of the culture, right? So I love hats, bandanas, t-shirts, hoodies, man. Like, you know, so I think there's room for it, definitely. So showcasing is a good way to put it. Absolutely.
And,
I'm gonna say
and
yes to that.
okay, cool. And I'm also recognizing that there's going to be some competition amongst the Worcester area establishments that
Right.
are selling their wares, if you will.
Really.
How are you going to differentiate what you do? And obviously, I'm going to guess showcasing your clothing line might be a good way for you to differentiate, right?
So when you say showcasing, you said what competitors?
Yeah,
One
I know.
after
How are
the
you
other?
going to compete with those other
Gotcha.
dispensaries
Yeah.
in the Worcester area? How do
Yeah.
you differentiate why people should come to your place rather
Right.
than their place?
That's a great question. And honestly, the first thing that comes to mind when you say competition is a blue ocean mindset. I don't think, are you familiar with that? Blue
No, but
ocean,
explain
red
that to me
ocean?
because you are a very deep. You've got all these quotes of Michael Jordan and Albert Einstein. I did some
Yeah.
research on you.
Oh, my website you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, those are some of my favorite people. But yeah, blue ocean mindset is really looking at competition as it exists, is that it's a wide range, right? Meaning that if you're in a blue ocean, like there's no end to it. Like everything looks, you know, endless. Where red ocean is more cutthroat, like, hey, this is very rigid, maybe like a price war, you know, different tactics that are involved with red ocean, and it really competing in that sphere. I think if all of us in Worcester, and not only just Worcester in the state, look at it from a blue ocean mindset, meaning that we all have our own lane, then I know, you know, that's the way that is better for consumers, to be honest with you. So for us in Lori and I, you know, it's for us, it starts with being connected to the community and seeing that we know that we're much different than many other business owners, very involved in the community. I live 5 minutes away from the facility that here in Worcester. You know, I got initiated by the Worcester Police 5 minutes down the road. They beat my ass a couple of years ago. So for me, this is a full circle of, you know, basically what's going on in the world, right? We are in some issues sometimes that are, you know, very socially pressing, especially as what it means for people of color. And not only in cannabis, but just, you know, just in general. So for us, is really being able to tell that story of how, you know, the social atmosphere that we're in, and putting it in front of consumers to know that they're doing business with a great group rather than, you know, special interest group, an out-of-state group, a multi-state operator. You know, that's the story, is really connecting with the community through authenticity. And I, you know, have no better way to connect with the community than to tell real stories.
would you like to expound a little bit on what happened with the Worcester law
Oh,
enforcement?
absolutely. I love talking about it. Yeah.
Tell me.
So this is my second home. And I say this to people that I got initiated here because I'm from Bridgeport, Connecticut. I moved here in 2006 to go to Assumption College to play football more specifically.
Yep.
But I ended up getting kicked out of Assumption College because of weed related things, right? Like they said my dorm room smelled like weed. They kicked me off my campus. Then I ended up moving to Salisbury Estates, if you're familiar, which is not too far from our location.
Yep.
And I got the cops called on me and my friends. I ended up getting arrested for disturbing the peace. And then I also got I got police brutality. They beat me up, and this is all in like '07 or so. Yeah, man. So the fact that I got kicked out of college for something weed related, the fact that I was a part of police brutality, but then here we are 13 years later. Here I'm a professor in the same city. You know what I mean? I have a business coming up in the same city. That to me answers the question of differentiation. It's the authenticity being rooted here in the community, right? Like I know some of the guys that we've grown up with are multi-billion-dollar corporations. You know what I mean? So like, yeah, it's just a little different, right? I'm not hiring an analyst to do the work. It's me and Lori and my intern Jill over here.
Well, I know how smart Laurie is, and I'm going to just go on a limb based on the quotes that you have on your website. You're pretty deep, man. You really are. I guarantee you that having Albert Einstein, Michael Jordan, Nipsey Hussle, who I had no idea who it is, but now I do know who it is, but it's the Dr. Seuss quote that really hit home with me. Now I'm going to read it, okay?
Yeah,
I want to talk to you about it because I embrace my weirdness. It is definitely one of the things that gives me my identity, my personality, and I really don't care. But this is what it says. This is Dr. Seuss talking, not necessarily Ulysses Youngblood, but he picked this quote. Yeah. We are all a little weird, and life's a little weird. And when we find someone whose weirdness is compatible with ours, we join up with them and fall in mutual weirdness and call it love. I think that is a beautiful quote.
I agree, 100%.
So who's weird in your life?
Everybody. My wife, my mom, my business partner, my intern. We're all weird.
Basically, the word is synonymous with unique.
Right? 100%. Yeah.
Because if you stand out, and some people who judge you, and by the way, I'm not big on judging anybody, okay?
Absolutely.
But, you know, you stand out for some reason, people might think that's unique.
Right.
Or even label it weird, depending on why you're standing out. Let's just be honest here.
Yeah.
That being said, you know, it's a challenge for you just walking down the street. If I was walking down the street and you were walking down the street and a police car happened to drive by, who's going to get picked on? Who's going to get stopped and say, hey, what you doing? Or, right?
I think the difference is that we know the answer to that question. We're trying to fix that, right?
Right.
You know, and especially when it comes to cannabis, it's like, oh, we all know the statistics. Black people get arrested at exponentially, you know, more rates depending on what county that you're in and what state, you know, but it's really addressing those challenges with solutions, you know, because it's tired to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. It's like, what are we doing to make things better at this point, you know?
Well, I will say this. Without knowing the result of the presidential election yet, because we are live at this point, we do know that the cannabis industry picked up 5 for 5 on their ballot questions yesterday. And that's a huge win for this industry because it means, I believe it's 3 more states are now adult use legal and 2 more add in for medical. I think that was the score. And South Dakota was the first state to get both medical and recreational passed on the ballot. So there's kind of a, I'm guessing 420 on Wednesday is going to be a big celebration.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Are you encouraged with those results as an entrepreneur and a businessman? Are we going to break down the stigma finally, you think?
Yeah, well, I think that the stigma has been there. It's just, you know, not existing. Well, I shouldn't say not existing. I think some of the studies we look at, you know, 60% or 65% of people in the United States are for legalization. So, yeah, the stigma is definitely changing. It's more about policy and politics at this point, you know?
And I'm not I don't like politics, just in case you haven't figured that one out yet.
Yeah, me either. We're friends. We're together on that, man.
Fair enough. Well, I think we're more together than you think we are, Ulysses. Okay, first of all, our last names are derivatives of each other, right? Yo. I mean, I could be a Youngblood.
Let's go. Add it to the end. See what people think of you.
What is the schedule? What do you've got? You got some goals for when you think you're going to be operational and all this?
Absolutely. And it's funny you bring that up because I spoke with my GC today, and we'll probably be done with construction come January, February. And, you know, after the construction is done, we have to have a host of inspections on the local level and state level. So without the doubt, the goal would be, end of February, Marches. I would say February.
What's the one thing you'd like to see change in the Massachusetts area when it comes to cannabis?
One thing. Wow. I would have to say being in the economic empowerment program, and I could say the same for social equity. I think all the social programs have a good intention. I think that there needs to be some change around, basically who it's intended to, improve and help out. Because I say that, and going back to the point of, being in Worcester, where we've been up against, billion-dollar corporations, having expedited licensing is cool, but we still have to go through everything else that all other businesses have to go through: host agreement, special permit, construction permitting, and everything that we just mentioned costs money. You know what I mean? So I think the big challenge is funding. I mean, and it seems obvious, literally seems obvious, but it is a challenge for economic empowerment and social equity businesses.
And it's interesting you brought that up, the funding part, which we all know is probably the biggest obstacle to opening and going through the whole regulation process and all that. But I also know how restrictive marketing policies are in this space too. And, besides your sign, look, I'm going to guess that you're going to leverage your entrepreneur spirit and your clothing line as a way to get people into your establishment.
Yeah, I would say there's probably more than it's more, and I talk about this often, is ancillary businesses, right? Or ancillary adjacent, I like to say adjacent services or products. So, I mean, in many cases, that could be music. Cannabis and music culture run, together through and through. Sports, another one that runs to parallel paths. So I think it's more important, and that's why you talk about the clothing and things of that nature. The culture. I think it's more important to focus on those things to help drive the brand, rather than saying, "Hey, we have the highest THC content." You know what I mean? Come get 2 for $25. Like, no, that's not compelling enough for people.
That's right. And besides, if you know something about cannabis these days, it's about the terpenes and the impact with the amount of THC in the plant, right?
I guess, yeah. I'm not a science guy.
Yeah, and by the way, I've interviewed more scientists in the last year and a half than I ever met in my entire life.
That's great. Did you learn anything?
What's that?
Did you learn anything?
Oh, I've learned so much. In fact, they use words I've never even heard before, okay?
Right.
So I tried to ask them to dumb it down to somebody who was a sportscaster and a history major and, was in newsrooms my whole life. So I just try to make it so that they can actually learn how to talk to the public, because not having public service announcements talking about the benefits of this plant and how it can enhance your life still is, I think, is a big factor for the industry. I've been preaching this now for as long as I've had this microphone on again. So I hope that eventually happens, not only in Worcester, but in the entire industry, because there's still so much knowledge out there. People are still learning about this plant, even at the highest scientific level.
Absolutely. It makes me think of when you talk about like layman's terms and understanding the science. There's a great gentleman that you should probably get on this show as well. His name is Gene Ray. And I bring a lot of admiration for him because he's also a Black male working in this industry. And I love being around people that know more than me. He is a person that is he's a weed scientist, and I love saying that. And he's, like I said, another young Black dude. So I understand when he talks about cannabis, but he's just super knowledgeable when it comes to, laboratory extraction process and things of that nature, the science side of things.
Well, we'd love to interview him because he would be able to educate us on Wednesdays or talk about his science and medicine that he's obviously on Mondays. Those are the two different. We have a Medicinal Monday show and a Professor Weed Wednesday show. So if you make that intro, that would be awesome. But speaking 100%. Of, let's talk about the guy who actually made the intro to the two of us, if you don't mind. Was was David Monty a student of yours?
He was more than a student, man. He was a leader, to be honest with you. The guy, I think what's really cool about him is I like to understand people's backgrounds. And I know he has a brother that also works in the industry. So I feel like he got a lot of knowledge from his brother, and he brought that into the classroom and talked. and spoke so diligently. He's a great writer. I think I told him this, like every assignment that he would pass in, is that I really, to your point, like understood what he was saying when it came to different regulations. It made sense. He made great recommendations. So not just a student, just a leader in the class that we had together.
Well, we certainly are glad that I've finally reached out to him, had an opportunity for him, and he is working with us in the future. And I'll tell him that his professor gave him a good recommendation too.
Absolutely. That's great.
All right, Ulysses Youngblood, how can people find out about you? Tell them about your website, where they can go.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys can find me. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Ulysses Youngblood. You guys can find me there. My Instagram is UJ Youngblood. My website, as you had mentioned, Mr. Young, is ujyoungblood.com. And then you can find our business, themajorbloom.com. And then same thing across all platforms, social media, The Major Bloom as well. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, the whole nine.
There you go. I found you pretty easily. And more importantly, do me a favor, call me Jimmy, because when you address me with respect, and I appreciate that because I know that's important to you too, it just makes me feel old. And I have that last name. I embrace my youngness. You know what I'm saying?
Young, Jimmy Young. Does anyone call you James or Jimbo?
Actually, my oldest friends call me James A, because A is my middle initial, and for some reason they just have always liked that. Maybe because they know me better than anybody. I don't know, but I've always was Jimmy on air, and Jimmy is an easy one to remember. And plus, it goes back to the fact that I'm 63 years old, and I want to be as young as I possibly can. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, hang around me. We'll be fine.
Well, you could certainly help me with my style because I have no style. So I'll be in touch with you about that too, Ulysses.
That's great, man. Well, I appreciate that. And it's weed too, obviously, when those packs come in.
You got it, man.
Hoodies, I'll get you some weed.
Okay, I can try it, I suppose, as long as I'm not working. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Anyway, Ulysses Youngblood, thank you so much for joining us here on Cannabis Chat. And we now are going to take a break, and we're going to kind of wave the flag about some of the accomplishments that we've had over the last year here at Pro Cannabis Media. Don't go away. We've got more coming up.
Take your Zoom call podcasts or webinars to a whole new level.
Nurse Mark and the Green Nurse Podcast. We are here.
That's right. PCM can animate your logo, add eye-catching full-screen graphics, and lower third identifying motion graphics. Look like the network. Act like the network.
We are Pro Cannabis Media. We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hello there. Here we are again, another live stream from the new studio of Pro Cannabis Media. This is Cannabis Chat, and I'm Jimmy Young. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Every week, Kurt and I get together to review some of the biggest stories in the cannabis industry. He and I talk about them. We have a few comments, and then we get reports from Canada, New York, and Washington, D.C.
And this week's no different, Jimmy. We finally have Vermont moving toward recreational cannabis with retail opening in their state. We have an old state and a new state, Colorado and Illinois, both setting cannabis sales records in July, as well as multiple efforts to legalize the cannabis plant in America, including our friend Steve D'Angelo getting involved.
But first, let's go to Deborah Borchardt in New York to check on the financial weed scene. Deborah?
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Jimmy. Well, things seem to keep going the wrong way for Charlotte's Web.
Whoa, Jimmy Young in the weeds on the water this week. We've got the CEO of Kushko, Nick Kovacevic, with me. This guy has built his little company in 6 years from $2 billion in sales to $145 million in sales.
We can get this thing to be fully legal here in the next few years, I believe, but it's going to take far longer for the stigma to change.
I think you guys are the pro-cannabis story.
And I love pro-cannabis media.
Hi, I'm Jody Roberts with Eastern Security State, and I love pro-cannabis media.
Hi, I'm Laura Beener. I'm the president and co-founder of The Healing Rose, and I love pro-cannabis media. It's been such an integral part of our success here at The Healing Rose.
And you know what? The best media company out there is Pro-Cannabis Media. Look out for them. They'll make you famous.
Hi, I'm George, and I love pro-cannabis media. I also love Western Mass Hydroponics, where we've got everything you need from seed to bloom to bud, and then to smoke it afterwards.
Cannabis Media.
Well, hello there. Here we are again, another live stream from the new studio of Pro Cannabis Media. This is Cannabis Chat, and I'm Jimmy Young. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Every week, Kurt and I get together to review some of the biggest stories in the cannabis industry. He and I talk about them. We have a few comments, and then we get reports from Canada, New York, and Washington, D.C.
And this week's no different, Jimmy. We finally have Vermont moving toward recreational cannabis with retail opening in their state. We have an old state and a new state, Colorado and Illinois, both setting cannabis sales records in July, as well as multiple efforts to legalize the cannabis plant in America, including our friend Steve D'Angelo getting involved.
But first, let's go to Deborah Borchardt in New York to check on the financial weed scene. Deborah?
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Jimmy. Well, things seem to keep going the wrong way for Charlotte's Web.
Whoa, Jimmy Young, in the weeds on the water this week. We've got the CEO of Kushko, Nick Kovacevic, with me. This guy has built his little company in 6 years from $2 billion in sales to $145 million in sales.
We can get this thing to be fully legal here in the next few years, I believe, but it's going to take far longer for the stigma to change.
I think you guys are the pro cannabis.
And I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Jody Roberts with Eastern Security State, and I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Laura Biener. I'm the president and co-founder of the Healing Rose, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. It's been such an integral part of our success here at the Healing Rose.
And you know what? The best media company out there is Pro Cannabis Media. Look out for them. They'll make you famous.
Hi, I'm George, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. I also love Western Mass Hydroponics, where we've got everything you need from seed to bloom to bud, and then to smoke it afterwards.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Right now, ready to go? Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to another Wednesday of Cannabis Chat. I'm Jimmy Young from Pro Cannabis Media. You know, we've been calling this Wednesday show, this live stream that we do on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, the Professor Weed Wednesday show, because we talk with educators. Well, today, of course, being Veterans Day, we're actually going to have a whole bunch of veterans on with us, and they'll all be coordinated by a woman by the name of Ann Brum from a joint venture. And Ann will kind of be acting as a co-host at about 4:25 today. She'll be joining me on the Zoom call. We do have a bunch of veterans lined up to talk about their experiences with cannabis, and unfortunately a lot of them have had experiences with opioids, and they've used cannabis to get themselves off opioids that were actually prescribed by VA hospitals and other Veteran Administration medical professionals. So we will be talking about that. We'll be talking a lot about the educational initiatives that enrich the participation of marginalized groups in the cannabis community. And that'll be coming up a little bit later on, a little after 4:25 or so, when we get Ann Brum in our little Zoom room. We also have a great lineup, and I'm going to give Ann all the credit in the world because she put this thing together. I've already watched one webinar today with veterans, featuring veterans, including an old friend, Dr. Marion McNabb, as well. And we're looking forward to talking with as many of these people as possible. And on Friday's Green Rush show with David Rabinovitz, we'll also have some veterans with us as well to talk about their experiences. But before we get to all that, and while we're waiting for our first veteran to call in, I do want to tell you a news item because it's really an interesting news item, and it was put out by the Gallup people. Now, I know the pollsters in this country have taken a bit of a beating this year because of the polls that were in effect before the presidential election and then the results of the presidential election, although I think at the end of the day and at the end of the tally, I think those pollsters will actually rebound. But going into the election and over that first 48 to 72 hour operation of collecting and counting all those votes, they did take a little bit of a beating. But the Gallup poll that was released this morning, and I think it's interesting that they released it on Veterans Day, 68% of Americans believe that cannabis should be legalized. 68% of Americans believe that cannabis should be legalized. That is the highest number that has ever chimed in on that subject, according to any poll. It's interesting that the Gallup organization actually started polling about this question in 1969. I remember 1969, okay? I was 12 years old in 1969. That was the year of the amazing Mets. You know how everything relates back to sports with me. Anyway, 12% of Americans in 1969, they obviously didn't talk to a lot of the let's just say the San Francisco crowd, if you will. Back then, 12% said it should be legal. The figure hovered between 25 and 30% between 1975 and 2000. 1975 and 2000, 25 to 30% of Americans thought cannabis should be legalized. And then really since then, it started to climb steadily and steadily. I believe it reached 66% in the fall, but now they're coming out with this result, which is 68% of Americans believe cannabis should be legalized. And this poll was actually taken right before the election, September 30th to October 15th, a sample size of 1,035 adults from all 50 states. And this was also the election that brought 4 more adult use legal states into the fold, if you will. And it also brought in a medical program in the state of Mississippi, which perhaps was maybe one of the biggest surprises out there. Anybody in our Zoom room yet? Nobody's in our Zoom room yet. Okay, we'll continue here, and I can tell you. Wait, do we have a ding dong? This is great. This is why I love live streaming so much, because you just never know what is going to happen. And you never know who will get in and call and talk to you and be able to take some of the pressure off the host a little bit. You don't have to listen to me talk for the next 15 minutes or so. Okay. We may not be hearing them. Okay, that happens. We know that too. And we don't. You're going to have to restart? All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a time out. We're going to restart the stream, and then we're going to come back with a phone call with a veteran, a friend who is a veteran, but we will be back on this stream, so don't go away.
Catherine!
Wait. Never mind. Do we have her? Elizabeth, are you there?
Jimmy! Jimmy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Elizabeth. Can you hear me?
Houston, we have audio.
So I'm talking.
Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
Elizabeth. All right, let me tell the people exactly who you are, okay? And
Oh my
we
goodness.
we are
Okay.
old friends now. We're old friends now because we've known each other for at least 2 years. Elizabeth Damron from Louisiana, from New Orleans, Louisiana, is a 12-year retired U.S. Marine. This woman was a Marine, ladies and gentlemen, and she is now
Is a Marine.
Sorry, you're right. Once a Marine,
Come
always
on.
a Marine.
Come on, what's a Marine, always a Marine.
And she's a research psychologist out of New Orleans. She's also involved with the Louisiana Marijuana Sensible Policy Board. And we always enjoy, first of all, saying, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your service and your dedication to the cause, and for correcting people like myself about exactly how I should introduce you. So thank you for joining us on this Veterans Day, and thank you for your service. How are you, and what's going on in New Orleans?
Thank you so much, Jimmy. I miss you. This whole being separated and having to social distance is hard. I'm a hugger. I'm so used to giving hugs. So, but I'm glad to be talking to you. Thank you. Veterans Day it's an interesting day because it really brings me back to why I ended up in cannabis, actually. So it's like, it's a special day. It's a heavy day. It's an awesome day. And it's just like, it's so much more than a free meal at Chili's or Outback, it's Louisiana's tough. Louisiana's been a tough state. Really, just not just to get the pharmacies, which, we have pharmacies up and running now. It's still tincture only. CBD sales are allowed, but it's a pretty stringent process that they've set up to have products appropriately licensed by the state board and the Department of Agriculture. Now, and anyway, so we're kind of, it's slow. COVID hit us particularly really hard. We have a lot of shipping and oil and gas industries. So unfortunately, what was set up from last year, we had a ton of momentum. And going into this year, we were ready to kick some ass. Oh, wait, can I say that on live stream? Can I say the A word on live stream?
Anything goes on the internet at this point, and we know we're having mature conversations for adults over 21. So yes, you could say that. You could probably throw in a few other words too, but I also know you're conscious of that, so we'll avoid those other words. Let me tell people your history with the Marines. You are an expert on someone who has looked at PTSD and using cannabis to overcome PTSD, and that was one of the themes on the webinar I was watching earlier today. What is exactly your experience with cannabis as far as getting and dealing with the PTSD that you had?
Well, it's been a decade worth of therapy type of question, right? But to sum it up in so many words, in the military, it's very much a take ibuprofen, drink water, you'll be all better. Change your socks. Like, pain is truly weakness leaving the body, and that's it. Unless you are literally broken and bleeding, your injury doesn't necessarily exist. It has gotten better over just the last 10 years, but it was very much that culture even 15 years ago when I was still active duty. So needless to say, the mental health aspect it's totally invisible, and it's still very much a can that we are opening when it comes to research and researching for alternative methods to treat PTSD. So I went through some seriously traumatic things while I was on active duty. There were like 3 major instances that kind of, boil down to. And I did, you go see the wizard, and you have to go through all this therapy, and, that's your appointed place of duty. So, I lost out on promotions sometimes because I had to spend so much time in therapy because that was my appointed place of duty. So instead of being at various training exercises, so it was a thing. It was a real issue. So close to retirement, which was in April of 2014, I was on a gallon storage bag of pharmaceuticals. It's about 18 to 20 meds on my active duty prescription list, active prescription list while I was on active duty, which means for all your analysis purpose, those medicines are what is prescribed to you. You better be taking them, or you could get in trouble because you could be seen as misused. You could be selling them because it happens. I mean, you name it. So, instead of, hey, you better piss clean, it's you better, have all this stuff in your system. Yeah, right? It seems backwards, and it is. But anyway, so I was dying, literally. Like, my body was just, it was starting to become a shell. And it was a real lonely existence. And my son, he's 8.5 now, but he was about, he was probably 3.5 when I retired. And so anyway, he remembers actually sometimes when I was on the meds, and he finally admitted that there were times when I scared him. And I didn't mean to, I didn't, hurt him or anything, but just like, all of a sudden, my personality was flipped, just the meds. There's so many. Anyway, I needed something else. And growing up with a military family and aspirations, of course, it wasn't even aspirations. It was, you're going to go to the military or one of the academies, Annapolis or West Point. It was expected, especially being the eldest. So I didn't have any issues ever with cannabis, and all my friends smoked, and it was like the cool, like, just, these are my people, like, this is where my heart's at. So I didn't really use until probably 3 months after I retired. So we're talking like June, July-ish of 2014. Mm-hmm. And it was like, hey, look, try this, see if it doesn't work better for you, and get off some of those meds. And sure enough, like, I saw that it worked better. I was real quickly coming off some of the pharmaceuticals, and my doctors were pretty impressed. I was being treated at the VA at the time. And anyway, I got pregnant with my second child. She's 5 now. And, so I didn't use because I wasn't comfortable. I wasn't, here we are, second kid. Anyway, I digress. So, I had to go back on Lexapro, which a lot of people are familiar with, or escitalopram. It's pretty all around use. It's pretty prevalent realistically. And I didn't like it. And it was awful. My body started hurting again. It was just really not a great time. And I can tell the difference between my children too, because of what I was taking during the pregnancies. And that's a whole separate show. Right. So anyway, I digress again, but, I am done breastfeeding her. Here we are, fast forward, I'm done breastfeeding her. And I knew I was going right back into cannabis. And I started with, I smoked, but then the gummies. Do you remember the puff gummies, like the Wana sour puffs? They're absolutely delicious. They were like in little leaf shapes. I remember those, and now they're really hard to find, but they were like perfectly dosed and had the best flavor. And it worked really well for me at the time, because I didn't need a lot to smoke. So, and I was still weaning off of meds I was still on. Anyway, I was going to school for psychology, and I got at this, so concurrently, and I'm coming off the meds, and I'm tracking like my own results. And, as I got into the upper level classes and started getting into like graduate specific neuroscience classes, I realized there's really something here. There's something in the way, with the neural pathways. And if you start looking at, even the roots of the cannabis plant and the way that they talk to each other. And if you put, between 4 and 6 plants in one bed, how they kind of like, they nourish each other, right? And it's like a neural network. Kind of, that's exactly what goes on in our brain. And it's like, whoa, hang on. So what I realized then, I was like, light bulb, we can use this plant and finally effectively transition warriors that get forgotten and they get left behind. And it's like this ghost wanders around just through society. And it's like everyone expects them to act a certain way, but they can't help it. You have been trained to be a freaking on-call fighter for who knows how many years. Like, I mean, in the Marine Corps, they say the transformation is forever, and it's no joke. Trust me. I've been through a couple of psychology classes. I have to appreciate the science. I do. I mean, it is to a science the way that they break you down and build you up to be exactly what they need you to be. No kidding. I mean, it's amazing in behavioral modification and stuff like that. However, we have generations of souls wandering lost. And because they haven't implemented a science to bring them back home. And cannabis brought me home. And I've got 12 veterans specifically that I have worked with. And, several of them, they finally have come home. And it's just like, I mean, it gets heavy. I mean, we can get all deep and everything, but we might need, a joint and a bonfire for all that. But really, so it's like, as I got into it and as I did the science, as I went through my own transition, as I, assisted other people, which only furthered it was therapeutic for me too, to help. These are my brothers and sisters, regardless of generation. And leaving one behind affects everybody. Regardless of service, you're now affecting this entire battalion, this entire wave, because one guy got left behind. So, it's a personal passion. It's like, yeah, I could do the science and this and that. And it's, yeah, it's cool to have a cannabis brand or this or that. And I don't dog anybody. I mean, Jimmy, we have met the coolest freaking people, and like true, but for me to be able to actually give some peace to my brothers and sisters, to heal their brains and to actually undo the science that was so perfectly done on us, to do our jobs. And we were really good at it. But now it's time for us to be there for our families, to be there for our neighbors and, our parents, or, you know what I'm saying? So that's what cannabis does. Essentially, it's a key. It's a key to heal trauma.
There you go.
So anyway, I digress, but there you go.
You're a good digresser. And more importantly, Elizabeth, I know that we got kind of a bumpy start there and everything. And I do have other people coming on, but I think you set the tone for what it's like to have to go through this as a Marine and how you have to cope with it and what you did to get out of that. So first of all, I got to say thank you for your service again. Thank you for connecting with us and adding your story to this, okay? We're going to invite you back We're going to invite you back on our show on Friday, and this time you have 2 days to prepare so that you could be in a place where we can actually see you and talk to you. Is that fair enough?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I accept your invitation, and thank you so much. My heart is so warm right now. It means a lot. It means a lot for you to listen and for whoever else is listening to listen, especially on Veterans Day, because it's real and it's a thing. And it's appreciated. Trust me. Like, it's so appreciated. People fly flags and say thank you, and it's a lot. So I love you so much. Thank you for thanking me.
Thank you, Elizabeth. We'll talk to you again on Friday, and we look forward to seeing you. And I'm glad you are back to the Elizabeth I remember. How's that?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
All right. There you go. There goes Elizabeth Damron. And, of course, we blew right past 4:20.
I know.
But that's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll figure out a way to get back to it at some point. Anybody who's watched this show in the past, do you want to do it now? All right. So this is what we're going to do, because I listen to my director when he tells me to. It's 4:20-ish. We're going to take our 420 break. This is a salute to the Waldos and the group out of San Rafael, California. These guys started it. Police picked up on it. It was 420 public consumption of cannabis going on. Law enforcement used that code. And the 420 break for me in New England was always about the song Shanty by Jonathan Edwards. So what we do is we play the song Shanty, and then we'll welcome in Ann Brum from a joint venture, and we'll get on with more veteran stories. Don't go away. Cannabis Chat continues after this.
Yeah, this is a tune that I wrote back in 19... I've forgotten. We had a saying in our old band, one of my first bands in 1966 or so. What are you going to do tonight? Oh, just, like every other night, just going to lay around the shanty and put a good buzz on. Gonna sit down in the kitchen, fix me something good to eat. Make my head a little high, make the whole day complete. Gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. Pass it to me, baby, pass it to me slow. We'll take time out to smile a little before you let her go. We're gonna lay around the shanty, oh mama, and put a good buzz on. You're on something. Go ahead. Rick Brodsky, everybody. Nothing to do and there's always room for more. Fill it, light it, shut up and close that door, baby. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Take it, okay. Prohibition never works, it's time to realize it. It grows in my backyard, it's time to legalize it. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. I'm gonna sit down in my rented car, I'm gonna jam it into drive. Gonna head on out and play at WSCA with Sean, I'm glad I'm alive. We're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on. Every night and day, we're gonna lay around the shanty, mama, and put a good buzz on.
Nice. It's Friday. Thank God. Thank God Jonathan Edwards is joining us live in the WSCA studios.
All right, welcome back to Cannabis Chat on a Wednesday afternoon. We are live here from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. and I'm joined now by another old friend, Ann Brum from A Joint Venture. Ann, thank you so much for joining me on Cannabis Chat today.
Hey there, thanks for having me.
And it was a big day for you. First of all, tell people what A Joint Venture is all about, the company that you started, and then let's talk a little bit about the webinar that went on today and that new venture for you.
Right. Well, first of all, Jimmy, thank you for having me. Thank you to your team at Pro Cannabis Media. I'm excited to be here on the Cannabis Live Chat, and thank you for everyone who's been available to join us. My name is Ann Brum, and I am located here in the beautiful Northeast, specifically in Massachusetts, where the market is developing. I founded a business development agency called Joint Venture & Co. We established it in 2018. We're boutique. We work on very specific projects with specific folks and brands and missions and different projects. So, and like Jimmy was saying, one of the projects we were so thankful to be a part of it from the concept and delivery of that idea coming to life was known as the 2019 Veterans Health and Medical Cannabis Study, as well as the Cannabis Advancement Series. And that was a comprehensive project. We were able to, under Dr. McNabb's direction and in partnership with UMass Dartmouth and with some oversight and support from Dr. Stacy Gruber, the components of the survey was designed, and it was also designed for what's known as Institutional Review Board submission, and which then goes in for academic publication or academic journal review. I'm sure Dr. McNabb would speak much more beautifully about this. And then that project founder as well, who really started it, was Stephen Mandile, who's a veteran and cannabis professional. So you'll be hearing from him in about a half hour. But today, giving more breath and life to the project, we ended up partnering up with the Cannabis Science and Technology magazine. And as part of their sister brand launch known as Cannabis Patient Care, they chose our project to launch with. So they put a beautiful 42-page publication or supplement together. And they also complemented with a beautiful live webcast that took place today from 11 to 12:30 Eastern time zone. So thank you to that team, the Cannabis Science and Tech team and the Cannabis Patient Care. Congratulations. And thank you to Dr. McNabb and Stephen Mandile, as well as all the veterans who participated in that panel. And yes, happy Veterans Day. And it's one things that what we can do to help make changes by actually doing stuff. And that was an important project for me to participate in, as far as what business development means is part of growth development, and you can't grow without being a part of the community. So just a little tidbit, but yeah, check us out, jointventure.co. But we're excited to join you all today and bring on some guests to talk about some exciting projects that Joint Venture is a part of. We really want to highlight some women that are leading the way of creating an inclusive community with marginalized groups, as well as two veterans who are also actively doing the same. So yeah, so in a nutshell, Joint Venture really helps to build cannabis brands, wellness brands, and different cannabis initiatives, build a reputation for reliably better experiences through marketing, led business development, and promotion. So we're thankful to be here, and we're ready to get on with the show.
There you go. And education is the driving force behind this entire green rush movement that has been going on in this country really since, well, for at least 20 years. I was just reporting on the Gallup poll that says 68% of Americans now support the legalization of cannabis, which is the highest report of any kind. They've been doing this poll since 1969. And it just shows you every year it seems to advance and advance. And it's all science, research, and educationally driven. And here you are trying to enrich the participation of people for this exact cause. So I salute you for that. But I also know that you've got two people that we have on hold in our Zoom room, and we do want to bring them in now if we can.
Yes.
One is Ashley, and I'm going to attempt to pronounce their last names, both of these. Now, I had a science teacher with the same last name as Ashley, and it was Boucher.
That's right. That's how you say it.
How about that? Mr. Boucher. I remember Mr. Boucher. Now, the other person is a nurse practitioner. Her first name is May. But May, I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to say Fuimaono. Any luck?
Almost. It looks like Ashley's on a split screen right now.
No, we got it. We'll get them in here. We'll get them in here.
Okay, wonderful. I'm so excited that they are available because I have some stories for you as far as how we ended up meeting and the type of projects that we're able to work on together and or support one another from afar. And yeah, I'm really excited to share the stories of these amazing women and some of the projects that we're working on. But
so Ashley, Ashley, you can hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
Terrific. I understand you're the founder of Quality Controlled Analytics. Can you explain a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, Quality Control Analytics is an accredited responsible vendor trainer in the state of Massachusetts. We work with cannabis companies to get them responsible vendor trained and to get that certification. The company is actually the first accredited in the state, and the company has a supplier diversity certificate with the state of Massachusetts as well.
Well, we are all for embracing our differences and the championing diverse causes out there and diverse people as well. And I do find this to be so true in the cannabis space all the time when we talk to people, that we are all so passionate about this cause. And it's so neat to meet people like yourself, and Ann, of course, has been doing it now for a couple of years that I've known. But one of the things that I took away from the webinar today, Ann, and I think it was Wayne who brought this up, dropping the D of the PTSD, post-traumatic stress, as opposed to and get rid of the disorder. What's your feeling about that? Is that something that we could actually see at some point, and actually having PTS as a condition to actually get your medical card? Do you see this happening at any time?
I mean, we both, Stephen, Marion, and I, as well as other colleagues, including a Massachusetts CCC commissioner, advocated at the State House to add PTSD as a qualifying condition. Massachusetts right now has over 260, and we would definitely benefit from that access for those who are suffering from PTSD and they're not looking to receive a medical card for another condition. So we're hopeful that the next round of bills that are going to be submitted that will add PTSD as a qualifying condition. As far as medically speaking and diagnosis is concerned, I have no idea, but the PTS growth is a term that's starting to be used more and more, and that definitely is accredited to Stephen's suggestion when we were collaborating with Cannabis Patient Care and Cannabis Science and Technology magazine in coming up with the concept for this publication. So it was actually Dan, who was in Hawaii, based in Hawaii at this time, who had mentioned that topic of removing the disorder and referring it to as just this stress. But yeah, I mean, it would be great to have that as a normal term or a normal or more used description of what individuals are going through when it comes to some kind of anxiety or stress condition or diagnosis.
It really, and especially it's Veterans Day, and it's been one of the things that makes me really mad when I hear about the stories that Stephen tells pretty regularly, and I've talked to him a few times over the last few years, that the veterans go to the VA hospital and they are immediately given, dozens of opioids and all the other Lexapro and all the other neat stuff out there for prescription drugs. And, then what happens? They come back. They can't even, the doctors of the VA can't even talk about cannabis as an option for them. And it just bothers me beyond, and it's one of the things that I continue to rail about as well. But I do want to go back to Ashley for a second, and I do want to get opinions from both of you, because we're coming off a historic election in this country that unfortunately still is going on. And I'd like to get your impressions of the fact now that President-elect Joe Biden is in place, at least in theory, that their platform does seem to be more friendly to cannabis. They've come out and said, they want to decriminalize it. Even Joe Biden, who was someone who was not a villain, but someone who was not really well thought of those who were pro-cannabis in the past, has said we want to give opportunities for treatment, not punishment. And I am all for that. In fact, I think our prison system is not a great thing either. But I'd like to get your impressions. Are you encouraged with the results of the election as far as it is related to cannabis and cannabis decriminalization? Ashley?
Not until I see it. Not until I see that legislation in place. I can be hopeful. There have been, things in discussions on the table previously, and they've gone nowhere. And so until I actually see it done, and hopefully it's done right and done well, so that it benefits the majority of the individuals, not only those who use it as medicine, but those who may have been impacted, who are imprisoned by that. Until it's done, I can be optimistic, but yeah, I want to see it done.
I think we all want to see it done at this point. I think I'd like to see the election done at this point too. Can we just get that over with first, right?
Well, Jimmy, go
ahead, Ann.
Oh, I was gonna say, Jimmy, I was hoping that the intention of bringing Ashley on, Danielle, and May is centered around the topic of education and outreach initiatives that enrich the participation of marginalized groups within the cannabis community. And there's so many different ways of being able to have an impact on that. And I'd love to share a little bit of story of how Ashley and I linked up, or how whenever we can get May online as well and bring her in on the conversation, which then led to us working with Danielle, and I'm not sure if Samantha is joining or not, but I was hoping that I could, share a little bit of what brought us here today as well.
Yeah, no, go and go.
Okay. Well, back in earlier this year, Ashley had reached out to us and she was like, I see what you're doing. Let's try to, these are some of the ideas I have. Let's come together, meet, and see what we can do. We did meet right before COVID, and had decided to kind of come up with this grassroots initiative starting in Massachusetts, in disproportionately impacted communities, and bringing them kind of in between the lines, real information of how they can engage and participate in the industry. And I'm psyched that she did link up with me, because what happened after that, we began kind of developing the content, and Ashley ended up then connecting with a nonprofit out of New York City known as Women of Color in Cannabis. And that's when we met. She introduced us together, and met with one of the board members, Samantha. Shout out to Samantha and the Women of Color in Cannabis. And also led us to Danielle, who also works with the organization. And now this power of partnerships has really expanded into this deeper and hopefully really considerate and thoughtful program to provide for folks who want to tune in and benefit from the information. So I want to thank Ashley and Danielle. And when it comes to May, met her at a Patients Out of Time conference. And that's a pretty clinical heavy conference, and didn't know that smoking our first joint together would lead to a meaningful conversation. But May has a beautiful story and the sort of work that she's doing in communities of color on the Big Island, in Honolulu, the Honolulu area, and especially when it comes to cannabis, and she's an entrepreneur as well. So it all, the power in partnerships and this grassroots initiative and community is what's going to make, hopefully, our industry develop into the one that we would like to participate in, you know?
I am amazed at how passionate women are and the role that they're playing in the rollout of this industry in so many parts. And I do believe we do have Danielle with us. Danielle, can you hear us all right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. There you go. Okay,
Welcome,
great.
Danielle.
Hi. I thought I was just going to be attending, and then I noticed I was showing up. I had you open on the other feed. I was like, oh, there I am.
There you are. Tell us a little bit about your background and how we are moving the envelope and moving the needle towards educating the world about this plan.
Sure. So I got involved in cannabis in college, which was back in the early 2000s. So in Illinois, I was involved with human rights work and knew that I wanted to do, figure out how to do racial justice work. And it led me to cannabis policy reform through a few organizations. Students for Sensible Drug Policy was one of them. And long story short, after graduating in Illinois, I was recruited out to California to work for Berkeley Patients Group, which was one of the first legal dispensaries, and I helped found Oaksterdam University, created the curriculum. That's the first cannabis college in the US. That was in 2007. I've worked with plants and also ran a cannabis doctor's office. Dr. Frank Lucido, who was one of the first primary care doctors to recommend cannabis for kids with seizures and autism. And 7 years ago, founded THC Staffing Group, recently moved back to Chicago and still doing staffing, specifically diversity and inclusion, staffing and consulting. And we're a national company. So I've been involved in a lot of different aspects of the industry over the last 18 years, approximately. And lots changed, obviously, in that time. But my focus has always been the same, that no matter how far ahead we get with business and tax and regulate, we still have thousands of people incarcerated for cannabis, mostly Black and brown folks. And that's not just going away. And even if we somehow magically get them all out, we've got millions of people with criminal records who have trouble finding a job and can't pass a background check even for some cannabis jobs. So all of our work is kind of centered on that, just figuring out how to reduce barriers to entry for formerly incarcerated people, and also increase diversity and ownership. As we all know, there's a white monopoly in capitalism, especially cannabis. So as Ann mentioned, we're developing resources for people who want to know more about jobs in the industry and how to obtain them.
Terrific. And we just interviewed the Dean of Faculty from Oaksterdam last week. So I'm very familiar with the oldest institution for cannabis learning in the United States, right? I learned that for sure.
Yeah.
What the biggest barrier, it seems to me that the biggest barrier to entry for those who have been most impacted by the war on drugs is access to capital. And every startup business is always looking for operating capital. I'm going to throw it out there. I guess even Ann would be the one I would ask on this more than anything else, is are we starting to find certain groups that are out there that are providing capital? Are they making capital more accessible to economically empowered applicants for these licenses?
I mean, I think they'd like to say they do, but like Ashley mentioned earlier, like until we actually see it,
Right.
You may see like some weird contracts where 90% of the ownership is going to this like major operator as opposed to, 10% going to the social equity or economic empowerment applicants. And when we're referring to social equity and economic empowerment applicants, specifically those programs in Massachusetts that I'm citing, I'm not too familiar. I know there's some activity happening in the city of San Francisco and the state of California, but capital, like Danielle said, it's still a capitalism type of world right now, and a lot of it is through Caucasian men.
Yeah.
So, but that doesn't mean that we're still not able to do things. Cannabis is a grassroots movement. It started very much in marginalized communities like the LGBTQ community, especially in the early 90s in the state of California. So let's not forget it. These movements start with the people. It doesn't start from legislation and people of the government. So let's keep that. And speaking of, that's why I want to also talk about the work that May's doing out in Hawaii. Hi, May. Thank you so much for joining. Please share what is going on in Hawaii as far as legislation and ownership and entrepreneurship and the medical program.
Yeah. So can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. And we can see you too. That's terrific. Yep. Go
ahead.
Yay.
My name is Me Fuimaono-Poe. I'm a family nurse practitioner and the founder of the Mandile Cannabis Clinic. So we're the first nurse-led cannabis clinic in the state of Hawaii. We've been operating since 2016, and we have certified over 8,000 people in our state. And it's not just certification that's important to us. It's also really education, individualized dosing plan. So Hawaii is very unique in that it is a medical program. It's vertically integrated. So we are seed to sale, and we currently only have 8 licenses in the state of Hawaii for THC, for cannabis, for dispensaries. We just passed some really great legislation for hemp. So I think that with the kind of close of, sugarcane, the last sugarcane factory stopped production in Maui a couple of years ago, really our ag sector has been wanting to use hemp and to grow it not only just for what it can do to remediate the soil from sugarcane, pineapple, which typically have heavy pesticide burdens. So that's kind of where we're at, is opening in the hemp side. Our THC side is still very, very vertical, very medical. And, as long as we have Governor Ige, we probably won't have adult use here for a while, which is good. We want to get it right. So it's nice to see these great other states leading the way, so.
I don't know if Massachusetts is leading the way, but we're trying to go some way anyway. But I do want to go back to something you said about, and of course, everybody on this call believes in educating the public about the benefits of this plant and how to use it responsibly. But I'd like to know about the education of the legislators that are out there. Are you being welcomed? Are you being asked for your opinions and are asked to come in and talk to committees and educate them about this plant? Is that happening or not?
I think that's for you, May.
May, that's for you.
Pardon?
Could you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I have been part of two big forums for our legislators. One was for cannabis and opiates, and that was for the Senate and the House. And I also did one with the Attorney General. So I feel like as far as legislators go, that they're open to cannabis, specifically, medical cannabis, and really growing that program.
Good. And I'm glad that they sought you out. I mean, to me, breaking down the stigma at the government level, whether that is at the host community level in the local towns or the state level and then the federal level. There's so many different levels when it comes to government in our country, and each one of them has a unique challenge as far as educating the people that are in charge. And I just wonder, have you noticed that they're actually not, maybe they're more inquisitive, but are they more accepting of the fact that there are benefits to this plant?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Hawaii was the first state in the nation to pass cannabis legislatively. And that was in 2000. So I feel like, Hawaii has always been open to cannabis as medicine. We just move incredibly slow. We take our time. Everything is island time.
It's 2020. Time has stopped. It's no longer a 24-hour day. It's a 72-hour day, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. Everything's taken way too long.
Well, I want to say too, like, in addition about the medicinal benefits of the plant and whether we're referring to cannabis or hemp, also legislators, academic researchers would benefit from understanding the history of the plant within the country and as it was used as medicine and was on the pharmacopoeia. And then, the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937, and it really being based on some BS racism and greed. Let's keep it 100. And as Danielle was saying, and how Ashley is also referred to, that folks that are serving time for this plant that's regularly available in more than half the country, folks need to understand that as well and be informed when they are speaking to legislators or when they're at voting in their local polls or local elections, in their regional and then their state elections as well. So that also needs to be a part of the conversation. And the project in particular that we're partnered up with between Ashley, Danielle, and I, as well as Samantha of the Women of Color in Cannabis, is to help fulfill and kind of shift and give more of a voice and a platform for people to feel informed, prepared to participate in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I'd like to think that we are trying to make some progress, but it is all about educating. One thing that I learned through the years is, and I love this stat, I'm pretty sure I'm accurate about this, in the 1920s in the United States, there were 3 million prescriptions written by MDs, medical doctors in the United States, for cannabis in the 1920s. And then it was 17 years later, or later, that DuPont and Hearst and the DEA and Harry Anslinger and all that stuff that got that act passed, and that changed everything. But before that, doctors recognized the medicinal benefits of this plant and were writing prescriptions for it. And you take that plant out of the whole medicine world from 1937 on, and what have we had? We've had cancers, we've had epilepsy, we've had autism, and all this stuff is out there. And I've always wondered that perhaps the wrong drug got prohibited in 1937.
100%, but it was also perpetuated on really deep racism and greed. So, have we come any further, guys? I mean, let's face it. We have a more politically divided and racist culture right now than since the 60s, which I do remember, okay? And I really thought that they were making progress in the 60s and 70s, and then we elected Barack Obama, and I thought we had made such huge progress, and then we didn't. Frustrating.
Back to educating the legislators, a lot of them are so far ahead on, let's tax it. Yeah, we need the money. Let's talk about the business aspect. And some of them honestly don't know that there's still people incarcerated for it. So I agree with you that there's, in some ways, there's the legalization could be a setback because we forget. The legislators forget, and then we say, it included, legalization, like in where I'm based, Illinois, that the legalization included automatic expungement. So we took care of that. We fixed it. It's like, no, those automatic expungements didn't happen yet, and they're not free. This is not, a quick, easy overnight solution. It's going to take many years to even begin to undo all of the harm that's been done. So I agree with you. Even if some of the racism ended decades ago, we're still, cleaning up people's records.
There's a reason why there's systemized is the word before racism, and it has been embedded in this country for a long time. I do know one thing, however. We all know who Steve D'Angelo is of the Last Prisoner Project, I'm pretty sure. And I'm pretty sure I read over the last 24 hours that he is working, I believe he did, got the oldest incarcerated person that has been behind bars for cannabis crimes released.
Richard DeLisi, and that was Kiara Juster and Elizabeth Buchanan. Kiara I think on the West Coast and Elizabeth in the state of Florida. Yes.
So
and if I can just say,
go ahead.
I just wanted to say, but there, obviously there's a lot of appreciation for the work that's being done to release, these prisoners, but there's the fact that there are some things that you can't get back, like a child cannot get that time back with their father. I grew up with my father in and out of jail, and I grew up in disproportionately impacted area in the middle of it, and that's time that you can't get back. So there are consequences to the war on drugs that that you can't rectify. However, when talking about education, I've taken and channeled that anger and a lot of those things that have happened to me. And I was working with a police station prior to COVID-19 and prior to the pandemic, and we were discussing the legal use of cannabis. What does legal look like? What does illegal look like? And how is it actually used? What is the plant? How is it used as a medicine? And those police stations found that to be invaluable information, because they're enforcing laws and regulations that they don't even necessarily know, and also they don't even know anything about the plant. I had some police officers who said, "Oh, you can't get high if you just eat the bud." So there is a lot to that, providing education not only for legislators but also for police departments, especially where we have legal adult use markets.
Well, we all support education and telling people about these issues and making them aware of it. It's one of the reasons why I started this company and had this show as an open forum. And I definitely want to thank you. We have a couple of other people coming on in just a few minutes. But is there anything, would you guys like to give out where people can find you? We've been putting your websites up underneath your names. But is there any one event or something that you'd like to give one more good plug about? Don't be shy. Any one of you.
May, you go first.
May, you go first. You can't. You're from the furthest part away. I think we're like 5,000 miles away. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, following us on social media, our Instagram, Malia Cannabis, TikTok, Malia Cannabis. And then also you can, if you're interested in cannabis dosing, you can go and check out our website, which is aliacannabis.com.
There you go. And it's individual dosing plans. I heard that dropped in there too. And I'm a big believer in that. To keep track of your usage and what you're doing, what effect it had on you, how you got it into your body, whatever it is, keep track of it, and then talk to medicinal marijuana or cannabis practitioners, whether they be RNs. There are doctors out there in different states, so we encourage all of that. Now, and May, I'm going to tell you one other thing. Are you in Honolulu by any chance? Is she still with us? Yeah.
I am. I'm located in Honolulu.
It takes a while to get out to Hawaii.
Yes.
Okay, so I want you to look for an ABC reporter named TJ Horgan.
Okay, will do.
He's one of my proteges, and I can tell you that I might be able to make a call, and if you need any help getting some publicity or getting inside a newsroom, please contact me either through Ann or Jimmy at procannabismedia.com. Fair enough?
Yes. Absolutely.
May, we need you on that mainstream. Woo!
Yes, we want to move Hawaii forward as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you. Yes.
All right. So Danielle, you're still out there. Do you want to give a little plug for what you're up to and where people can
real
find you?
briefly, I'm thcstaffing.com and THC Staffing on social media. My name, as you see on my screen here, is how you can find me on LinkedIn. And then the group that we've been mentioning is Women of Color in Cannabis. I love their website. It's Woke World, so WOCC.world. And they're on Instagram. I think it's _woke, so _WOCC.
There you go. Thank you. And I think we've
Danielle.
got one more in the room. Correct?
Yes,
Ashley, is it?
You can find me at qualitycontrolanalytics.com, and I'm excited about the partnership with Woke, and we'll be bringing more information about that. So you can find all of that information at qualitycontrolanalytics.com. And thank you so much, and thank you, of course, to all of our veterans, as it is Veterans Day.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you all. And now that we're in contact with each other, feel free to use us in whatever capacity you need, and stick around. We're going to take a little break, okay? And then we're going to fill the room up again, I believe, with Stephen and Wayne. So don't go away. Cannabis Chat continues after this break.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hello there. Here we are again, another live stream from the new studio of Pro Cannabis Media. This is Cannabis Chat, and I'm Jimmy Young. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Weed Talk News. I'm Jimmy Young, the founder of Pro Cannabis Media.
And I'm Kurt Dalton, the founder of Cannabis.net.
Every week, Kurt and I get together to review some of the biggest stories in the cannabis industry. He and I talk about them, we have a few comments, and then we get reports from Canada, New York, and Washington, D.C.
And this week's no different, Jimmy. We finally have Vermont moving toward recreational cannabis with retail opening in their state. We have an old state and a new state, Colorado and Illinois, both setting cannabis sales records in July, as well as multiple efforts to legalize the cannabis plant in America, including our friend Steve D'Angelo getting involved.
But first, let's go to Deborah Borchardt in New York to check on the financial weed scene. Deborah?
Thanks, Kurt. Thanks, Jimmy. Well, things seem to keep going the wrong way for Charlotte's Web.
Whoa, Jimmy Young, in the weeds on the water this week. We've got the CEO of Kushko, Nick Kovacevic, with me. This guy has built his little company in 6 years from $2 billion in sales to $145 million in sales.
We can get this thing to be fully legal here in the next few years, I believe, but it's going to take far longer for the stigma to change.
I think you guys are the pro cannabis story.
And I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Jody Roberts with Eastern Security State, and I love Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, I'm Laura Beener. I'm the president co-founder of The Healing Rose, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. It's been such an integral part of our success here at The Healing Rose.
And you know what? The best media company out there is Pro Cannabis Media. Look out for them. They'll make you famous.
Hi, I'm George, and I love Pro Cannabis Media. I also love Western Mass Hydroponics, where we've got everything you need from seed to bloom to bud, and then to smoke it afterwards.
Welcome back to Cannabis Chat on a Wednesday afternoon. We somewhat talk about education and educators on this program, but today being a very special day, Veterans Day, we wanted to embrace some of the veterans that are out there in the community, making a difference in moving the needle, educating the public, and giving opportunities to people to learn more and more about this plant and the benefits of this plant, because it's very difficult, I know it is, for people to find traditional media that are willing to embrace this topic. And it's one of the reasons why I started this whole movement with Pro Cannabis Media. So right now, we still continue with Joint Ventures Ann Brum, and we also now are joined by Stephen Mandile and brother Wayne Smith, both veterans. So both of you guys, right? Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your dedication to this cause, because that goes beyond serving your country, because you're actually serving your fellow man now. And I believe that that is a it's an equal amount of sacrifice and passion for this. So I really appreciate that, both of you guys, and Stephen especially, because we do go back a few years. You're part of history in cannabis history in Massachusetts, of course, being the first person to buy adult use rec out at, I think it was Cultivate out in Leicester on November 18th, 2020. Did I get that right, Stephen?
That's a great memory, Jimmy. Better than I, yes.
Way back.
Yep.
Yeah, way back. It does feel like it was about 5 years ago, doesn't it, guys?
It really does, yes.
The longest year in creation. I do want to start right off with both of you to talk a little bit about kind of what Ann wants we all to talk about is the benefits of the campaigns, everything that you're doing right now to advance education in your communities. Let's start with brother Wayne, if you don't mind. First off, thank you, and it's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
I'm so deeply appreciative for what you do and Ann does, and thank you for having me.
So what are you up to? Give us a little background on how you are educating your world.
I am all in. As you mentioned earlier, we are in such an important point in history, and the struggle for justice is just incredible. That is to say that pharmaceutical companies are profiting from veterans and the American public, and cannabis and its derivatives have an opportunity to improve the quality of health, change people's lives. And I'm like you, I'm on the right side of history. I believe that we can offer healthy alternatives to veterans and to the public, and it will change their lives.
Let's hope so. Stephen, I know it's already changed yours, hasn't it?
You're on mute, Stephen.
Yep. Yeah. Oh. Yes, it has. It gave me life back. I like to say, like I really feel like I was, a walking zombie and a shell of who I was. And, getting off of all those medications was, at the time, very daunting, at least trying to get off of one was enough, but all of those medications almost all at once, but it had to be done, like anytime, as we're talking here, campaign, I made myself a campaign. I'm going to do this, I'm committed to it. I'm going to get through this no matter how difficult it is. And that's the essence of, what we're here talking about today is, nothing great happens magically or overnight. It all starts with someone thinking of it and then getting other people involved, sharing the message, taking action, and doing that together. Like just looking at things that have social justice in our past and writing votes for both women and people of color. Sorry, my dog's getting mad at me.
I love your dog.
And just that, and just that, at that time, they must have been like, oh, that's impossible. You can't vote. You'll never get to vote. It's just not going to happen. We are a veteran community. We are, we're not only used to hearing that, but, we get orders in doing just that. Like, here's something impossible. Go do it. So we're not going to back down from any sort of, any sort of challenge. We're gonna take that head on. but we're also going to have strategies, and we're also going to have many allies to help us do that. So, and Ann and Joint Venture and Co., her team there has just been, so incredible at the work they do, and like, again, taking on these things that look like moving mountains and being like, okay, we can do this, so just super appreciative to her as well and her team.
Thanks, Stephen.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I asked her. I mean, I've been hucking her to come on one of these shows for quite a while. In fact, it happened on Veterans Day, I think is very special. Stephen, you are a local selectman still in Uxbridge, am I right?
Yes, sir, I am.
And obviously, I know Caroline's is a dispensary in Uxbridge, and I just wonder. I was talking a little bit about the importance of getting involved and educating legislators at the town level, the state level, and of course the federal level as well, and how welcome are those people now? In your town, I'm guessing people are pretty progressive in Uxbridge. Yes.
Surprisingly so. I mean, this past election, the previous election, we were a red town. This election, we were a blue town. So, I'd like to say that the residents of Uxbridge are very open-minded, and will consider anything that could benefit other people. This town is very supportive of veterans, and I was shocked at how supportive it was of cannabis, and that is, again, I have cannabis to thanks for my path to service again. That was something that was missing from my life a lot before, was service to my community, whether it be my state, my town, my country. I lost that, and again, I don't say hate. I do not like saying, all thanks to cannabis, but literally it's been, the key in my pocket to so much. So I'm grateful to the plant, and everything it's provided me, all the friendships it's provided me. I mean, getting to meet Brother Wayne a little over 2 years ago now. And, as veterans, we all have that in common, but then to just get in common to learn more about him and all the advocacy work. And myself and veterans of this generation owe so much to Brother Wayne and other Vietnam veterans that stood their ground and, got the VA to do changes. So because of the work he did, I believe we can make those changes, those policy changes at the VA.
Brother Wayne, let's ask you, are you finding the advocacy for cannabis, is it being a little bit more welcomed at your level too?
Absolutely, Jimmy. I think, like you said in the previous segment, you remember the 60s,
yes,
and you remember the hostility for people just smoking a joint and peacefully and in loving situations. And many have gone to jail. Lives have been ruined. Now we have seen where members of Congress are openly talking about the possibility of legalization, decriminalization. And that's where, again, Joint Ventures has brilliantly come together with Stephen and I as veterans to recognize that there are some real pressure points where Congress, the American people at the state, local, and national level, they're supportive of veterans. They want veterans and believe veterans should be entitled to all kinds of opportunities for health care. And Stephen and I, we and so many American veterans and their families, healthcare professionals, people like yourself, recognize that this medicine, this plant, has medicinal value that can, in fact, improve people's lives. They don't need to take a handful of pain pills or psychotropics. So we have come together with Joint Ventures, and we are available to work with this industry. And then if I could just quickly say that I see us as part of a social justice movement. You mentioned in the 1920s, and you're right, that it was recognized that marijuana had real value and people were widely using it without overdosing or any deaths. So we once again have an opportunity to educate the American people, educate public officials, and to really change the way our healthcare system is in part. And cannabis is an ideal medicine to help us do that.
You know, it's amazing to me. Last week we had Bruce Barcott on. He's the author of Weed the People. He's the editor of Leafly. And in his book, he talked about how his attitude changed when he sat with a family friend who was a member of the ACLU, who explained to him that the legalization of cannabis is not a legalization of a drug, it's a civil rights issue. It's been used to wrongfully imprison hundreds of thousands of people of color that are still in prisons, and and it just doesn't make. I look at that and I see that is a blatant fact about racism, but it's also part of the history of the United States that, you know, we may not talk about in history classes in our schools, but we need forums like this to explain to others that it is truly a race issue, not a drug issue. Do you guys agree with that?
Well, I totally agree with it. And I would just quickly say that not only do I agree with it, I think, like you were saying, this is an opportunity for us to rectify that injustice.
Yeah.
And we have this unique moment in history, I think, with this administration and with people willing to change the laws. And we have an obligation to do that. What do you think, Stephen?
Stephen, how about you?
Oh, you're on mute.
Still muted. It's
Sorry.
He's
I
kind of
agree.
He's actually muting his dog. I know. All right, I get it. Sorry, we don't mind. Go ahead.
We love dogs too.
Yeah. No, I agree with you and Wayne and the other guests that were on earlier. This was never a war on drugs. This was a war on people. And, you know, it was designed as, you know, cannabis is illegal to put the hippies in jail, and heroin is illegal to put Black and brown people in jail. And it was really used as a tool for, you know, as Wayne was saying, we're talking about social justice. The Justice Department, you know, used this as a tool. Our government used this as a tool against us to try to, you know, keep the oppression going. So totally agree.
One of the things that, Ann, I'm pretty sure you brought this up, or the women in the other half hour, the challenges of being in a capitalist society and trying to get into a new industry that is so highly regulated, it's prohibitive unless you have capital behind you to even start the process. Now, we know, Stephen, Caroline's from Uxbridge is a great example of how you can not necessarily do it on a little budget, but a somewhat of a budget, as opposed to others. But that it's kind of like a catch-22. How do you give an opportunity to those who have been most impacted on the war on drugs if they don't have access to capital? And then we're going to free people from our prisons because we admit we made a mistake, if you will, and now we want to give them an opportunity, but they too have to have access to capital to get in the business in any way. How are we ever going to unlock the key to the bank, if you will, to give opportunities to have access to this capital?
Was that directed towards me or you?
Yeah, you guys, it's an open question. Stephen, you can answer it because I pretty much would like to hear your opinion on it.
Sure. You know, I believe, and that's one of the reasons I've decided to work with Ann and the joint venture and co-team and brother Wayne as well, is that, you know, like you were saying, easier said than done. Like, hey, it's legal, now everyone can do it.
Right.
Not so easy, you know, like there's huge barriers of fundraising and capital that have to come into play. But what's important to do, and, you know, to keep going with that, you know, getting that money, but what's really important in one of the paths, you know, I've gone down is build up your sweat equity, you know, like be one of those people that's actively doing and out there making things happen, being seen, being heard, and drum up support that way. You know, one of the, you know, everything I do is to help veterans, and I'm constantly getting messages and emails and calls from other people like, how can I do this? How can we do this? And, you know, that was, again, one of the reasons joining Joint Venture and Co. Is I want to take all of this on, you know, and it takes a team. but it takes a plan like everything else. And if you don't have that capital yet, don't stop working towards that. Keep going after turning over every rock you can there, but work on other things like sweat equity and having, working with legislators and working with other private businesses, and also surround yourself with other people that are doing, don't keep surrounding yourself with people that are also looking for capital. Surround yourself with people that already have the business, have the license, learn from them. Mentoring is one of the best ways to learn. And, you'll also find out things ahead of time that you couldn't plan for, but talking to other businesses that have done that, you can find out some of the pitfalls before you get there.
And Jimmy, I'm not sure that you would know this, but Brother Wayne knows quite a thing or two of raising capital or funds for major initiatives, especially when it comes to marginalized groups. And I would love for Wayne to kind of share what that was like, because that in itself is a major campaign, a major program. Talk about no stone unturned, like that Stephen is referring to, and during specific times that you did during in our nation. So could you enlighten Jimmy of your and the viewers?
My view is that there are some elements of capitalism that are here to stay, and we have an obligation to utilize. And yet, my belief, I think my value, is that capitalism needs to spread the wealth, to share the wealth. It's way too concentrated. And the most important truth is some of what you said again in the earlier segment, is that as our society changes, its demographic evolves, that we have to also reimagine how business, how women, people with disabilities, the other communities that have been marginalized, they have a right and they are demanding equal access. So the beauty of this country is, if we look at the long curve of it, is that change is slow, change is difficult. It's kind of like turning an ocean liner. But we have made great improvements from, even in my short life of 69 years, we've gone from like virtually black and white to Technicolor in high def. And we're going further, but it involves a partnership with business and nonprofits. That veterans, for an example, are an investment. We're not a charity. We are asking for the American people not just to say thank you for your service, but to invest in our post-war lives, to rebuild our lives, to help rebuild our communities and our families, so that our children have the same kinds of opportunities others do. So, I've had a long life and I'm appreciative of that, but I know that so many generations of Americans who have fought and died for the very same belief and idea that we share, and that is that our children won't have to go to war. Our children will be able to have the American dream. And I think, again, it's on me and each of us to take that responsibility and to, if I could just go back to something you said earlier in the earlier segment, Jimmy. Yes, the American people voted for Obama and then Trump, but look who we have now. We have, Biden and a woman, and women are going to lead us out of this nonsense. The guys we've screwed up, So
yes, we did. And by the way, I admit that, and I'll apologize for my gender and my race.
Yeah, me too. I'm guilty. We were wrong.
One of the things that a term that was used by a bank in Boston, it was Wainwright Bank. It was the first time I heard this term, socially responsible capitalism. And it is a belief that so many entrepreneurs in the cannabis space embrace. And again, I just hope that the more discussions we have in forums like this and others, we can at least share some of the stories about new money coming into this industry. And Ann, I think the two of us probably know a few people that understand and embrace this socially responsible capitalist philosophy. Do any come to mind for you?
I mean, for folks, I mean, here in Massachusetts, you have to, I believe an adult use application, you have to have what's known as, or proof that you have a positive impact plan and a diversity and inclusion plan. So in order to be compliant and for your application to be approved and renewed, you do need to have some sort of program or campaign in place that is intentionally reaching out to those marginalized groups. There are definitely a handful of operators in Massachusetts that I can personally attest to, and also ancillary services that are absolutely naturally, as part of their value system, being involved and ensuring that they're having those sort of conversations with those particular marginalized groups. But as far as like capital is concerned, it just seems like very tied to intergenerational wealth, and then those who have had ties with legislation. Just calling it kind of how it is, but not to say that, you know, underdogs like us here in Joint Venture & Co. is not positioned and planned to make a little bit of a ripple and disrupt the typical way of how folks are choosing to invest their capital. And like Stephen said, you know, the grassroots social impact sort of capital is an investment well worth it as far as the infinite game is concerned, the long-term game is concerned. So, and that's definitely what's important for us here at Joint Venture & Co. and something that I value tremendously when I look at Stephen and Brother Wayne.
Absolutely.
And from what I hear and what I learn in their life story, like this, they're storming the Hill in DC at a federal level and informing legislators, being a voice for veterans to have the access and choice, comprehensive access and choice, now and for future heroes that are coming home. And even if they don't want to, at least they have the option to. So those sort of initiatives that are enriching this sort of participation and education and campaigns, I think is the real winner as far as capital is concerned. You can have a shit ton of money, but if like your values are crap and the way that you're showing up in the space is crap, like keeping it real is very much what the consumers want in this space. They will sniff you out and not engage with your product or service. So I advise wisely for you to get it together and show up how you really intend to, and expand on that.
There you
Well
go.
said.
And Stephen and Wayne, I'm going to tell you right now, same time Friday, we do a show with David Rabinovitz, who's involved with the social equity community. He's the treasurer of MassCan. I'd like to invite both of you to come back on and talk with David, because getting access to capital is something that he too is focused on. And that's our Friday show. We call it the Green Rush, the business of cannabis. So definitely an open invite to both you guys to, we'll give you the Zoom link again, and hopefully you can join us Friday to talk about this, but more importantly, talk to people who have direct access to that capital. And that's,
I love it, Jimmy. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Stephen, thank you. And thank you to your dog too. And by the way, I showed the picture of your dog at the conference room at CCG. I took a picture of the two, and I love that photo of you and your dog. So
appreciate that.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Wayne. And thank you to the veteran community and the families and everyone who serves veterans. And I learned about the color of red, which is typically on Fridays, but I'm going to celebrate today. And Stephen has educated me that you wear red to honor those who are still deployed and overseas and serving. Like my brother-in-law, shout out to Seamus, who is in on a mission somewhere in Europe that I can't really say, and like that. So representing, thank you so much. And this is something that we can do to help make an impact and spread good vibes. But Stephen and Wayne, how can folks find out more about you and your work, your social, your emails, anything you'd like to?
Well, you can find us at Joint Ventures. I mean, really, this is the launch of what is going to be a remarkably I think, successful and exciting relationship. We are in such good company, but I'm also just so appreciative of your service to veterans, Ann. And Jimmy, you have no idea how wonderful it is to feel the welcome, the support, which we so badly needed when we came home from Vietnam, when Stephen came home from Iraq, and veterans are coming home tomorrow in the future. They need us, and we have an opportunity to right a wrong. And I'm so confident that and appreciative of what you're doing, Ann. So bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, you can email me at Mandile, MANDILI @jvco.com. And my social media, just search Stephen Mandile, Stephen with a PH, or SJ Mandile. I'm on all the platforms. It is so amazing to finally have a home at Joint Venture and Co. Like
that flag.
I know, like Wayne, in my meetings at either the State House or town halls or even down in DC in Congress, I've learned so much from speaking to legislators and their staff and everyone that's involved in the process. I mean, each office I go into, whether it be a senator, a representative, a mayor, or someone on their staff, when we're finished, I get pulled aside and like, hey, I use it. I actually benefit from a lot. I get that from all over, from everyone in every office. So it's there, and there's a hunger for education, and as us in the industry feel that we're surrounded by every day. Who doesn't know about this? Kind of attitude. So many don't get caught in that trap of, oh, well, people know about it. They don't need to hear from me. Yes, they need to hear from you. Reach out to your elected officials and let them know how you feel about it. Even if it's not cannabis, just anything, whether it's domestic violence or any sort of things going on in your community. You might want to change the world and head down to DC and bang on the White House door, but it starts in your town. It starts
right.
On your street, in your neighborhood. Like you can be participating in so many ways just by activating, people on your street. So it really goes from your neighbor to municipality to the state to the country. So.
And
well said, Stephen.
Well said, Stephen. And more importantly, and I can tie it back to the federal election here before we take a quick break, but we had more people voting in this presidential election, I believe, than ever before in history. And I'd like to see that continue on the local level and at the state level too. And maybe we have learned our lessons, and perhaps we will turn over a new leaf in chapter and become more of a better democracy, because that's what we're here for, right? I mean, that's the whole point of this. So again, both you guys, thank you so much. Great to see you again, Stephen, as always. Brother Wayne, I feel like I've met an old friend, so I look forward to
brother. I appreciate that.
Continuing. And stick around, because I think we're going to have double Anns. We're going to have an Ann and an Annie, and we're going to talk about retreating and getting one with wellness and cannabis and women and all this neat stuff. We'll be back with more of Cannabis Chat after this break. Don't go away.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And we're back. Like, now I'm back? That was a good cue. All right, welcome back to Cannabis Chat. We're in the home stretch. We were kind of hoping we'd be talking with another friend of mine from the Women in Cannabis movement out there. But for some reason, when you deal with different time zones, people get all mixed up when we say 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time is when we go live. So I'm not going to throw the name. I'm not going to tell you who it is under the bus, but I will say that Ann Brum is still with us, and she's done a super job as a co-host today in coordinating this discussion. And I know that there's still a few items that you, as the principal at a joint venture, want to talk about. So give me a few initiatives that you're involved with.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy, again. So I just want to, again, thank you, the viewers who are tuning in or for the restream. When it comes to different market development and expansion initiatives, whether it's a branded product, service, or a mission or an organization, that is something that joint venture definitely wants to support and participate in. Specifically in Massachusetts, we've had a medical program live since 2015. We're entering into 2021. We had adult use location open up at the end of 2018. And I have to say, some of the product that we're seeing in the space and the services that are available in the space for our consumers could definitely be improved. The whole supply chain of the continuity of raw material and then the whole supply chain of that product getting into the market and into the consumer hand is something that is a problem and is an opportunity here for us to develop both in Massachusetts and New England at large. So one of the brands that we are working with is called Behold, beholdgreatbrands.com. They are a Massachusetts-based brand company, and I have to say, I'm really proud of the standard of creative and branding that they put behind their product, and it's a great example for other brands locally to consider, to follow, and learn from. And I also love one of our clients is howells.com. They're one of the Massachusetts-born, New England-born brands here of a tincture line. And they're pretty strong, well-known, and continuously asked for by the consumers. But as part of the market development and expansion, community outreach and engagement with strategic partnerships with those of influence in the community has been really, really impactful and really allows these brands to make an impact and have that sort of conversation with their consumer or patient base. So I want to just give a great shout out to them. And another initiative that we're working on is with Different Leaf Magazine in Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. We partnered up with the publisher, Michael Cusick. Shout out to you, Michael.
It was his birthday last week.
Yes, yep, on the 1st, actually. And we were supposed to produce the New England's first learning festival focused on the cannabis, hemp, and CBD space. That was initially scheduled for May 2nd or 3rd, and then we rescheduled for his birthday, the 1st of November. But you will see a comprehensive, wonderful festival scheduled for next year. So as part of us, the alignment and the values that we bring into as far as development in the market absolutely goes in hand with community engagement and development. So I just want to shout out to Different Leaf Magazine, and you can learn more about Plant Market by visiting plantmrkt.com. And also they just launched a new podcast, and I'd like to give a shout out to their podcast interviewer, Britt Smith, who interviewed me a few episodes ago. Shout out to you guys. And lastly, I have a personal project. It's a live stream show known as One Plant, One World. It's the number one plant, number one world. And we focus on bringing on remote guests who are talking about cannabis in their culture in a global sense. So, and we typically stream that on a cannabis community app known as Hi-Curious, and that's Hi-Curious, and you can find that on iOS or I think, what is it for Google Play, perhaps? Yep. And you can find me there at Ann_joint_VCO. They have a calendar of live stream shows, all sorts of content on there for you to kind of get immersed in the life of those who integrate cannabis for their overall well-being. And my next guest is from Mexico, and we'll be talking about what's going down in Mexico. And then and that's going to be next Wednesday, the 18th. And then on Wednesday, December 2nd, we'll be welcoming our guest from South Africa, and that's Donahue Woodman. And we're just learning. We are just learning what's going on in the world and what they're doing to create impact and stigma and get this plant to the people. So anyways, that's my shameless plugs. And I could go on and on. I know it's Wellness Wednesday too, and I have a wonderful initiative to talk about if the next guest isn't on, and I will go on and on and on.
Well, now I know the other reason why I liked having you on. Yeah, we're not going to find the other end. But wait, I want to go back to one thing. And normally we don't do this live on the internet, but I'm going to extend an invite to you and your One Plant, One World show. Now, are you live streaming that visually?
Yes.
Then after the show, you and I will talk, but we'd like to have and add that to our programming, because my goal, as I think you know, is to create a 24/7 cannabis channel that will be available on OTT channels, hopefully in the first quarter of 2021. And we've already embraced the Green Nurse Group. We've embraced the Emerald Media webinars. They do educational webinars once a month out of New York. That's a female-run media company.
Yay!
And do you know Christina DiGiovanni? It's a good one for me to introduce you to.
Maybe by face.
Okay. Anyway, and the other one that we have is the Vote Pro podcast that they do out of Washington, D.C. Three guys that are musicians in that area that have built a nice following, and they do a great job as well. And we're always looking for more quality content, and especially in the educational, edutainment field, news and information, because that's what we like to do here on our programs, and it's obviously my background as well. And
well, you'll definitely like the High Curious community. It's very pro cannabis, pro wellness, pro taking care of yourself in a way, and everyone's super supportive. And there's all sorts of live stream shows on there. From there's typically a 420 show on there with the founder of the app known as the Home Show with Laura Mandile. There are, it's consumption friendly. So don't be surprised if you're going to see consumption on camera, because this is what we do and how we live our life. And we're not trying to be something we're not. But there's great contact, great community. There's, Zoom parties that we have. There's a makeup in cannabis show where she does a great job of showing how to apply it. There's a little bit for everybody, really. So you would enjoy Laura Mandel's vibe and the vibe of the team at High Curious. So yeah, One Plant, One World. We typically have a show once a month, and my guests have been from British Columbia to Toronto to Poland to Berlin, and now Mexico and South Africa.
Fantastic. Well, a network is just a group of like-minded people or stations or internet sites. So I'm really glad that you came on and we finally connected and got this going, because we are aligned with our ideals about this industry, about this plant. It's something I've always respected about you as well. And I do want to ask one question, and we have just a couple more minutes here, and it is something that has bothered me a little bit. And, COVID has been very strange, but it's also been good in one way. It's allowed us to step back a little bit and be able to reach remotely into other parts of the world through Zoom or through WebEx, or there's StreamYard. There's a million other applications out there. But in Massachusetts, over the first couple of years of adult use rec, certainly since 2018, The community evolved, and we had all these events. And when I found out that there's become there's some cliques that have emerged, some infighting. And I think we lose track of the fact that we really are all in this fight together to educate those who are not as enlightened as those of us who have been using this product or familiar with this product or learned about this product even over the last few years. And I wonder if you're concerned about some of the infighting and cliques that have emerged in this space.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, think about it. It reminds me of whatever, I don't know if most of you had this similar experience of middle school and high school, but it just pretty much reminds me of that. And let's just say I wasn't so into the mainstream scene when it came to high school. And I ended up finding a pact. And I think when you're focused on doing business or initiatives of meaning and purpose, naturally life has a way of aligning you with those who share those similar values. I'm not sure that we can really, I'm not like, those cliques serve their purpose. I think they're perhaps losing out on just different perspectives and different experiences. And I guess that's one way of going about business. But as far as I'm concerned, and as far as the way we do things with Joint Venture and Co., rooting for the underdog, being inclusive and having that diverse perspective is definitely where it's at. And we could go on and on with data and study and metrics that absolutely support that point I just made. And I'm just, kind of over. Your clique will stay clicky, but I'm not sure how much impact and money you're going to be making by thinking and being that small.
Right. And of course, we're in Massachusetts, which, is a relatively newcomer in the cannabis space. And yet now, at least they're not one of the new states, because now there's 4 new states that have been voted in at the ballot box. They're now going to start their adult use programs, right? 5.
Oh, right. Sorry. 5 initiatives. Yep.
5. Well, there were 5 initiatives, but there's 4 adult use legal states: South Dakota, Montana, Arizona, and New Jersey. Did I miss one?
Nope.
No.
I don't think so.
But Mississippi introduced medical for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I was just going with the legal adult use states. I believe 38 is the number of total states now that have some kind of medicinal program. Mm-hmm. By the way, for a Schedule I drug that has no medicinal value, according to the federal government, which obviously is one of the biggest hurdles for everybody in this business. And I'm really hopeful that if we can move forward and move forward with a new administration, we actually might have a shot at descheduling it off Schedule I. Are you confident, or do you go back to, I think was it Danielle who said, I'll believe it when I see it?
Right. That was Ashley who said that.
Ashley, sorry.
She's right. So Congress has the MORE Act that will be coming up in December. And then, whatever ends up happening with whatever in January, it's still going to take some time for whether they deschedule or reschedule, and then what that means with the States Act and the Safe Banking Act, which we were talking about access to capital. Those should hopefully open up any sort of liabilities from financial institutions providing capital for cannabis plant touching businesses, or even ancillary businesses such as Joint Venture and Co. to the industry. So yeah, I mean, I'm hopeful, but we're in it for the long haul. I think for folks who think that this is like a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, of like 3 years of your ROI and whatever investment that you're putting into, you're wrong. You're in the wrong space. Right. This ain't for you. Boo. Like, it's time to look into something else. So, yeah, no, I'm excited for Massachusetts and New England in general, because we're positioned to really be a leader of innovative product, innovative services, of higher standards when it comes to sustainably sourced product, sustainably sourced packaging, continuity of availability of products in the marketplace, a range of cannabinoid profiles as well. That continuity of product availability in the market in New England at large just validity, brings validity to the industry from those who are potentially considering it or curious about cannabis in general. So I'm really so focused on helping out existing businesses here in Massachusetts be set up to participate sustainably within the supply chain, bring in these resources that they need, and then bringing it to market and ensuring that people are ready to know about it, engage with it, and be loyal to your product or service. That's my hope for what's happening in the market. And that is, I'm determined to do that with joint ventures. So it's on, like we're going to make it happen somehow. And there's all sorts of compliance and all sorts of challenges and things that we have to go through, but it doesn't scare us. And we're ready to roll up the sleeves and like do the work, have the conversations, get the contracts signed, and getting proper brand product and services into the market. So that's kind of how I'm feeling about that. And I haven't even talked about our cannabis and yoga retreat, which was the first we hosted in of New England's first. I know that was a little bit of what we were going to talk about with your other guests, but
right. But that's okay. Well, you know what? I'm going to introduce the two Anns at some point, Ann and Annie, and you guys will get along great. And I do really respect what you're doing, Ann Brum. I'm always been a fan, as you know, and I look forward to hopefully collaborating on more programs like this. You know now that you have an open forum with me. Any project you need a little boost for, please share, and we'll get it out there to as many people as we can. And hopefully we can change this world. You know that, right?
One stone at a time, like one conversation at a time, one seed at a time, one product at a time. It does start with conversations. So
there you go.
Yeah.
And I know just the guy to talk to because I just love talking to people. So anyway, Ann Brum from Joint Venture Co. How do people get in touch with you? You've got a website, Google it. It's easy to find.
Yeah, jointvco.com. We're on all social platforms. You can link up with me on LinkedIn at Ann Brum. I would love to connect with you there. And we look forward to having you participate in different projects that we're engaged with, different services that we offer, and really looking to position New England as a beautiful participant in this emerging industry.
There you go. Ann Brum, thank you very much for joining us. And for everybody here at Pro Cannabis Media, remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there. Let's use it responsibly. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll be back here on Friday with another edition of the live show, The Green Rush with David Rabinovitz. Take care.
Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Pro Cannabis Media and Cannabis Chats. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you, Ann.
Pro Cannabis Media Group and ProCannabisMedia.com present In the Weeds with Jimmy Young and News Dabs, all live from the Performer TV Visual Radio Studios in Quincy, Massachusetts. Don't look now, but it's a whole new world of weed out there. Pot is flower, it's Bruce Banner and Blue Dream. You've got bongs and dabs, resin and shatter, vaping and edibles, new terms, new strains, and new ways to use cannabis sativa, the plant. Some just made with CBD, and hemp has minimal THC. There's sativa and indica strains and 100 chemicals, all legal in 10 states for adult use. There's a lot to get to know. Get used to it, folks, because it's legal in the Bay State and it's not going away. Neither is In the Weeds with Jimmy Young next. Revolutionary Clinics is just one of 49 medical cannabis dispensaries in Massachusetts, but there's a reason why it's one of the most popular. It's their patient-first philosophy. All day long, they teach, they educate, they communicate about this complicated plant called cannabis sativa. That's true whether you visit their Cambridge location in Fresh Pond at 110 Fawcett Street or at 67 Broadway in Somerville. Revolutionary Clinics, where the patient comes first.
Hi everyone, welcome to a special live edition of News Dabs and In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. I'm Nicole Spiller, now reporting for the Pro Cannabis Media Group and ProCannabisMedia.com. One of the biggest issues facing the cannabis reform movement is the treatment of PTSD with cannabis. Veterans who return to civilian life have been getting dozens of medications from the VA for treatment of PTSD and other ailments. Many of those medications are opioids, and now that the dangers of those drugs have been exposed, many veterans have turned to cannabis for help. One of those is Stephen Mandile, who is standing by in studio with Dr. Marion McNabb. Hosting our In the Weeds segment, as always, is the founder of Pro Cannabis Media, Jimmy Young. Jimmy?
Thank you, Nicole Spiller. Appreciate it. Welcome to the Performer TV studio in Quincy, Massachusetts. I'm Jimmy Young, the host of In the Weeds for this special live edition. And we welcome in two very special guests, Dr. Marion McNabb and Dr. Stephen Mandile. Doctor, congratulations, Dr. Stephen Mandile. Did you know you got an honorary degree from the Pro Cannabis Media Institute?
What an honor.
I knew you'd be happy about that.
I'd like to thank my parents.
The Academy, right?
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know these people, or even myself, Pro Cannabis Media is a Pro Cannabis Media site, and we are dedicated to telling the stories of the cannabis industry through their own words. Two people in studio right now, Dr. Marion McNabb and Stephen Mandile, have been at the forefront of cannabis advocacy in Massachusetts over the last umpteen years. How's that? Is that fair enough? Umpteen? That's one of those.
It's fair.
That's fair?
Yes.
Having a decade or so.
But Dr. Marion McNabb from the Cannabis Community Care Research Network, we call it C3RN just because it's easier to do it that way, right? And Stephen Mandile is a veteran. He was in Iraq. He got injured. He came back. He went to the VA. They put him on 17 medications. He kicked them all through cannabis. Is that accurate?
After the total of everything after the decade, it was 57 medications.
Oh, excuse me.
It's okay.
Between 1 and 5, you know.
What's 40 medications?
What's 40 medications? Stephen, your story really is compelling, I might add. And I also understand that, are you now a selectman?
Yes, I am.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And it's in Uxbridge, Massachusetts.
Yes, it is.
Which is where Caroline's is.
Yes, home of the first woman-owned dispensary in Massachusetts and home to the first microgrow license in Massachusetts as well.
Very cool. And I've been out to Uxbridge actually actually lived in the tiny town of Mendon for a little while.
The tiny town of Mendon,
which is right next to Uxbridge.
Yep.
It's the whole western metro, metropolis out there, I guess. So
yeah, it's a hub.
It is a hub. And Dr. Marion McNabb, can I just call you Marion?
Of course.
Thank goodness. And step in a little closer to your microphone so that we can actually hear you.
There you go.
Appreciate it. Tell us a little bit about your Cannabis Advancement Series. And I understand there's another event coming up August 22nd?
Yes.
On the North Shore.
Yes, and I'm glad you have this here.
Yes.
Really exciting. So the Cannabis Advancement Series is a product of work that Steve came to C3RN in December last year, asking to see if we can look at implementing a research study for veterans and their health and medical cannabis. Out of that, a Cannabis Advancement Series was born, which is our educational series around the data that is collected through this research study. We're on our 4th event now. It's a collaboration between C3RN, Steve, Veterans Alternative Healing, and Joint Venture and Co., Ann Brum. And so we've all come together as a partnership to run an event series that really tries to bring together leaders in the industry, thought leaders, policymakers, community members, veterans, citizens, scientists, academics, to really engage on how do we bring this industry here to the next level in a thoughtful, professional, and academic way. So we've had 3 events so far this year. Our next one is on August 22nd in Lynn, Massachusetts.
Yes.
That is my dad's hometown and where my broadcast career began.
Oh, wow.
At WLYN in 1979. It was the first talk show that I ever hosted back then. It was called Sports Call, of all things. What a shock, right?
Right.
And I'm going to tell you, you may even remember the first guest I had. You weren't listening, I know. But do you remember Randy Vataha?
I don't. I was 2 in 1979.
I know, but he played football for the Patriots. He played football for Stanford. He used to catch passes from Jim Plunkett. Doesn't matter. Anyway, somebody out there's my age will remember Randy Vataha. That's all I get. And by the way, he's about your size, Marion, by the way. Just saying. No disrespect. Here's the thing about cannabis and what I've learned over the first year of this operation that I've been doing this podcast is science and research is leading this green wave of the movement towards decriminalization, descheduling, and proper respect for the cannabis plant. Right?
I would say there's a room and a growing group of academics and scientists, but I think the people are really leading the way as well. Advocates, community members, not just limited to scientists and researchers. I think scientists and researchers have been limited in the last many decades from what they can study around cannabis and the funding available or the resources or the pathway to be able to research cannabis well. So it's really prohibited a lot of academics from being able to meaningfully study it. Now that it's legal here in Massachusetts, there's a research license category. It's part of everyday life. Now I think we have more of an opportunity. But in terms of those that are really leading the way for decriminalization or fighting for rights, I think over and over we often see it's the advocates who really are pushing change, including my colleague Steve.
Yeah, the research and the data, that's like the sword and the shield for advancement. We need those tools to finish the mission. You're going up against the old propaganda and stigma that was put out there, and just people accepted that. Well, these numbers that we're collecting now are the answers to the questions of, well, why isn't it legal? And it's always, we don't have the data, or it's this or it's that, and without any proof. So now it's like, well, here's the proof, here's some stories, and here's the numbers to back up what we're saying. That's on a much larger scale than you're thinking it is.
Exactly. And I think one of the most important parts of our study that we've been working on is the local nature of it. Just I guess to give the audience a little bit of background, we launched the Veterans Health and Medical Cannabis Research Study together with UMass Dartmouth on March 3rd this year, which was the launch of our Cannabis Advancement Series. It's a study that is fully anonymous, and it's for any U.S. veteran to take, so we don't collect any identifying information, IP address, etc. And what we're doing is asking veterans to share their current medical status, what health conditions they're facing, what their conventional treatments are, if they consume cannabis, either recreationally or medically. You don't have to consume cannabis as a veteran to take the survey. And then if you consume cannabis medically, then we ask for what health conditions they're most helpful for and symptoms. And then we drill down into stigma and education. So around family acceptance, health provider acceptance, and access issues. So I think we really are intending to use this information and this data, anonymous information and data, to really drive change at the local level. And what we find, we're focused on Massachusetts here. Massachusetts veterans are, 3 times more likely to die of an opioid overdose, higher than the national average of veterans and the general population. And there's a suicide epidemic that is of great proportions. So among the veteran population, 22 suicides a day. So what we intend to do with our event series and the Cannabis Advancement series and our research study is at every event, we're trying to use some of this information to drive policy change at the local level, meaning a city or town or wherever we're at, and trying to understand, within Massachusetts, it's its own commonwealth. There's 351, different cities and towns. So it's a complex place. So anyway, trying to use this data to drive change at those local levels and bring access.
And we're finding one of the great things about this, we're finding that for so many different issues, injuries, disabilities, of why they're taking the medicine, how they're taking it, and also which medications that they're able to reduce or stop taking, being able to use cannabis, and just due to side effect reasons, it's just great to be sharing that information with everyone. We're capturing all this data, all this information from the veteran community, but it's really a snapshot of the greater picture of people, just the United States, with all the different conditions, all the different injuries, mental, physical, both ways, and really coming up with choices, alternatives to in between, because we were talking about this earlier. You're going from ibuprofen to OxyContin. There's so much room in between there.
There's a big jump right there. I just want to say, right.
It's a huge jump. So how about, you gradually get to that, which was initially created as like an end-of-life pain reliever or any other medication that it replaces. There's always that room. And with our event series, we're able to talk to local, whatever area we're in, and we focus on issues relevant. We did the opioid epidemic in Worcester. We did entrepreneurship in Holyoke. We started off with healthcare across the lifespan of the human being in Boston. And we're just focusing on the things. So it's not for, it's for everyone. We're not leaving out anybody, whether you have been in the cannabis realm for decades or you're thinking about if you want to learn. It's the perfect place to go. We're not stigmatizing. It's just shared knowledge. You're hearing from industry experts, whether it be professional in the business or physicians. So it's all around. It's free, exactly.
Yeah. And that's the idea, isn't it, with the VA, to be able to get access to free medication and free health care, supposedly, right, Stephen?
That's the vision. Is this ends up, the VA does what they promised us when we promised to go over to fight these wars and being able to take care of us. So to be able to have the VA supplying veterans with what they need, even if it's cannabis, is what we want to see. But in the meantime, where it's not federally there yet, Massachusetts, we're there. We can do it. We can start now. We can set up something for our state to take care of veterans while the VA figures itself out and things move forward there with the DEA and everything else.
Yeah. And in the world of change down in Washington, D.C., there's so many bills going through the legislature right now, whether it be the States Act or the Safe Banking Act. But to me, one of the easiest things I think everybody should understand is, can't we help our veterans have access to medicinal marijuana? I mean, isn't that
it's low-hanging fruit, like every legislator that can do something will come out looking like they're helping veterans, because it's exactly what they're doing. It doesn't seem like rocket science, but
but you haven't gotten it done yet, right? And same thing with the banking. They're still in the cash economy. Right. It makes absolutely no sense. They're trying, and hopefully later on in this show we do have a guest planned on the phone. And again, this is the first time we've been in this studio, and Lord knows we're learning lots about visual radio and all the challenges. And again, we're talking to Dr. Marion McNabb and Stephen Mandile. So we are going to talk to Morgan Fox, who is the media relations director down at the NCIA, the lobbyist group that's down in D.C. I've never seen people work so hard. I went down there in May, and they're meeting with everybody and taking walks with everybody. I mean, lobbying is just kind of sharing information and leading with science and research just to get this needle moved a little bit and get the respect that the industry has been craving for a while. And everybody, it's really interesting. Everybody kind of agrees that, you know what, the time has come to make this, decriminalize this thing, get this off our books and take the people who have been hurt the most by the failed war on drugs, give them a chance to get a hold of the weed pie, is what I call it, the weed pie. Marion, you read, I'm sure you do, all the different research and all the different studies out there. There was one recently that came out about Colorado and use by youth in Colorado. And they're actually finding now that usage by our youth is going down in legal states.
Yep.
And, you know, you guys are smiling because this is kind of like volleyball where I kind of lay it up for you guys, right? And I didn't mean to hit the microphone. Like I said, it's a new studio. I don't know where anything is. So tell us a little bit about what that study means moving forward.
Yeah, the reason why I'm smiling is that yesterday Steve was aired on PBS Live NewsHour, and that study was the last slide on that video that was aired last night. So I would encourage folks to check out that.
Can I go back to that a second?
NewsHour.
Did they explain why it was the last slide, just out of curiosity?
They didn't, but if you look at the narrative of their story, you could understand why they wanted to, it was a very balanced approach to a lot of science right now in the cannabis industry is right and left wing, right? So it's very hard it's a pendulum swing. So anyway, they were doing a really good job at balancing. Right. And so anyway, that was the last slide. That's why I smiled. I think a lot of things about youth prevention. So I think, right now, at least in the Cannabis Control Commission and in Massachusetts, I feel like the state has a legislative mandate and has done a really good job of designing a public health prevention campaign, approach, messaging system to ensure that young people don't have access to cannabis. Also, that there's appropriate labeling, age restriction requirements. I think, the state here has done a very good job of implementing a public health campaign. So while we see, Colorado youth rates go down, they've implemented approaches that, reduce youth access. I think Massachusetts will do the same. And they already have. I mean, we can see great billboards around that are, really promoting like a legal, safe environment here.
Right. Use it responsibly. Again, I keep preaching this on my podcast on a regular basis, that it's an adult use product that is expected to be used responsibly, both recreationally and medicinally.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important to remember that, and I believe that you're going to have a colleague and a friend, a pediatrician on this show.
Dr. Eric Ruby is going to be coming.
Dr. Eric Ruby. I think it's really important to remember that, there is a lot of evidence and emerging evidence coming out around pediatric uses of medicinal cannabis. So anything from cancers and autism. There's a lot of science going on in Israel around this as well, a lot of clinical research. So I think it's important to focus on a pediatric population also. So while we want to ensure youth prevention, we need to make sure that that's balanced messaging, that it's not the new dare. It's this is responsible, but it's also a medicine, and be aware that children will need this in school medicinally. And I believe maybe Steve, or maybe at Colorado somewhere recently, just one school started to allow pediatric medicinal cannabis use. And I think it's really, really important. I'll be a little provocative because I also think it's important because a lot of our young people take medications that are much stronger and mind-altering in some instances than cannabis. And so I think just being aware of a balanced public health approach that ensures prevention while access is an important one.
And this is what I tell parents whenever they ask me, want to, talk to your kids about all the adult use products that are out there. To me, this is a great excuse, a great time to say, look, this is cannabis, this is alcohol, this is caffeine.
Yep.
Okay, and I had
Normalize it.
Normalize it.
Right.
Well, educate yourself about these products.
Yeah.
You know, more than anything else. And you know, parents always say, "Oh, it's difficult to talk to my kids about, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll." It really is what it comes down to. And I said, "Well, guess what? You were a kid once. Think about what you were going through when you were being pushed or pressured by your friends to, hey, just try this." And here's my thing that really gets me mad. Okay, a lot of things get me mad. But our youth today, when they do go after alcohol and start experimenting with alcohol, they're drinking to get drunk. They are drinking in excess to the point where you could die by having too much alcohol, especially when it might be the first time your system is dealing with it, right? To me, that is more of a danger than any cannabis drug at any concentrate, at any level. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, this is what bothers me.
Yep, it's the parent's job to talk to your child about it. I mean, if communication is the problem for you, you're going to leave it up to the alternative that they're going to learn about these things through institutions like your school and what their beliefs are, or out on the streets. I mean, I learned a little bit from there, but it's hit or miss when you learn it on the streets. But just to say that anything that comes without risks is careless. So you go through them all, and then you're like, okay, and cannabis is a form of harm reduction if you're talking about alcohol, if you're talking about these other stimulants for conditions like ADHD, even the stomach issues that some children have. So to say that it's absolute without any negatives from it is careless. But to then put it into those other boxes with everything else, like they complain about it being so bad, but they put the same messaging for the alcohol warnings as they do on the cannabis warnings, and then they complain that it's not bad enough because it doesn't mention psychosis. And it's like, alcohol causes psychosis too, and if you don't put it on there, it's this double standard of, well, we don't know what to do with it, so let's just keep it hidden. And it's like, that's not where anything's gonna any progress is gonna be made with it. So
absolutely. And some of the in our first study that was a predecessor to our veteran study, we also asked this data point in our current veteran study, which I'll look into now. One of the striking findings we found, we launched an open cannabis consumer and patient study, also anonymous, last year, and we asked the question, are you how are you using cannabis within your life?
What is your cannabis history?
Yeah, like how are you using cannabis in your life? And strikingly, we found that many were using cannabis to reduce their use of alcohol, they reduced their use of cigarettes, and actually serving in data form exactly what Steve said as a harm reduction strategy. So that, and strikingly in our study for veterans, 63% of our most recent data release of the veterans who took our study reporting consuming medical cannabis are using it to reduce the use of prescription medication intake. Right. So we all know that addiction and alcoholism, addiction, pills, they're all complex issues. So if we're seeing that cannabis is, serving as a positive substitute or alternative for some of these other harmful substances or unwanted prescription medications, you're reducing, cocktails or the ability to, I just think that there's definitely a need for more inquiry around it. I'm not saying that this is a silver bullet or, anything. It's a tool in the toolkit that I think clinicians and academics and healthcare providers and patients all could benefit from.
And it's proving to be a pathway to a better quality of life, which is the most important thing overall.
Absolutely.
Right. We do have a clip that I'm going to set up a little bit. You guys remember Johnny Carson. Anyway, that is your interview with Dr. Lester Greenspoon.
Oh,
right?
awesome.
Yep.
And it's a great little clip. It's a couple of minutes long because the guy's 90 years old. Now, first of all, tell us who he is and what his reputation is a little bit, guys. And then I'll cue it to our technical director and the guy who's putting this all together, Mike Zodos, and he'll play it. But it's a funny story about his first time use of cannabis with a very interesting personality. So first of all, set up who's Dr. Lester.
Well, I'm going to let Steve do it.
All right. So Dr. Lester Greenspoon is, the godfather, I think, of where cannabis came from to today, and that he was someone that was an academic that was sure that cannabis was bad for us, was positive. There's nothing good about it.
Yeah.
And
He's
then
at Harvard.
Right. At Harvard. And through his family, through his friends, was proven that he was wrong, and is such a great man that he came around to the other side and started working the other side to find the truth, and has helped cannabis move light years ahead. Was one of the early on families needing it for medical uses for a child, and it's just an amazing story. The whole family's just been so helpful. I met his son Peter, Dr. Peter Grinspoon, 3 years back when I first started my recovery, and being able to read Peter's book about his opioid addiction, and he was able to make me feel like I wasn't just someone oddball with addiction, that it was going across every, to say a doctor come out and say that he had a problem with addiction is incredible. So it's just an amazing family, and we'll get right into it. He's awesome.
Let's roll the clip, Mike, and listen to. He's 90 years old now, right?
Yes.
All right. It was Dr. Mary McNabb's interview with Dr. Lester Greenspoon.
Well, it was Carl Sagan and I were the closest of friends, and it was right up until the day of his death. We were each other's closest friend, but very shortly after I met him, we were invited to his apartment, and he lit up a marijuana cigarette.
A marijuana cigarette.
Here I was, a psychiatrist whose interest was in psychopharmacology, and I was a kind of I wasn't an expert, but I was supposed to know about those things. And I said to him, "Carl, you mustn't do that." "Why not?" he said to me. And I said,